Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, I never used the chain, deadbolt only. But this time when I got home, the chain was on from the inside. I stood there staring at the gap between the frame and the door, trying to piece it together. I had the only key. No windows open, no forced entry. I called out. Nothing. When I finally broke the chain with a screwdriver and stepped inside, the house was silent, too clean, too still. Only one thing had moved. The photo on the hallway table was flipped face down. The photo showed my sister and me at her graduation. She had been staying with me for 3 weeks while looking for work, had been past tense because her clothes were gone from the guest room, her toothbrush missing from the bathroom counter. The only trace left was a faint smell of her vanilla perfume clinging to the pillowcase. I picked up the frame with shaking fingers. The glass was cold, somehow colder than everything else in the house. I flipped it back up, and there we were, two people who looked happy, innocent, unaware of what was coming. But something felt wrong about that photo now. Her smile seemed forced, her eyes avoiding the camera. Had it always been like that, or was I seeing things that weren't there? My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She asked me to tell you she's safe, nothing more. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, then called the number back. Disconnected. I tried again. The same automated voice telling me the number was no longer in service. I walked through every room looking for signs of struggle, for anything out of place. The kitchen was spotless, too spotless. The coffee mug she always left in the sink was gone. The book she'd been reading, marked with a receipt as a bookmark, was closed and placed neatly on the nightstand. Even the wrinkles in the bedsheet had been smoothed out with surgical precision. In the bathroom, I found something that made my stomach drop. A single drop of blood on the white tile behind the toilet, so small I almost missed it. When I knelt down to look closer, I could smell bleach, strong, recent. Someone had tried to clean up, but they'd missed this one spot, this tiny evidence of something gone wrong. I called the police. The officer who came was polite but skeptical. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of foul play. Adults have the right to leave without explanation. He took notes half-heartedly, his pen scratching against the paper like fingernails on glass. When I showed him the blood spot, he shrugged. Could be from anything. A cut while shaving. A nosebleed. People clean bathrooms, sir. It's not a crime. But I knew my sister. She never made her bed, never cleaned up after herself. The vanilla perfume was wrong too. She wore something floral, something that reminded me of spring rain. Vanilla was what our mother used to wear, our mother who died when we were children. I started going through her things, the few items she'd left behind. A receipt from the grocery store dated 2 days ago. A library book about disappearances that she'd never mentioned checking out. Inside the book, I found handwritten notes in the margins, not her handwriting. The letters were smaller, more careful, like someone trying to disguise their natural script. The notes were disturbing, comments about how easy it would be to make someone vanish, observations about security systems, about routines, about trust. One phrase was circled multiple times: the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you most. My hands trembled as I turned each page. At the back of the book, I found a phone number written in the same careful handwriting. I recognized it immediately. It was the number that had sent me the text about her being safe. I drove to the library that evening. The librarian, a woman with gray hair pulled back severely, remembered my sister checking out the book, but she hadn't been alone. A man had been with her, tall, quiet, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He'd waited by the reference section while she browsed, never taking his eyes off her. The description sent chills down my spine. It matched someone I knew, someone who had been asking about my sister, who had shown up at the house unexpectedly the week before she disappeared. Someone who claimed to be an old friend from college, though she'd never mentioned him to me. I went home and searched through old photos, looking for any trace of this supposed friend. Nothing. I called her college roommates, her professors, anyone who might remember him. No one had ever heard of anyone matching his description. It was as if he had materialized from thin air, inserted himself into her life with surgical precision. The more I dug, the more questions arose. Bank records showed she had withdrawn a large sum of cash the day before she disappeared. Her social media accounts had been deactivated, not just closed, completely erased as if they had never existed. Even her email account bounced back messages, claiming the address was invalid. But the most disturbing discovery came when I contacted her employer. They told me she had never worked there. The business cards she'd shown me, the stories about her coworkers, the complaints about her boss, all fabricated. She had been lying to me for 3 weeks about where she spent her days. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by evidence that painted my sister as a stranger. The vanilla perfume suddenly made sense. She had been wearing our mother's scent because she was trying to become someone else. But was it her choice, or had someone been manipulating her, grooming her for something I couldn't yet understand? The text messages started coming regularly after that, always from different numbers, always the same message. She's safe. But safe from what? Safe from whom? And why did she need protecting if everything was voluntary? I installed security cameras, changed my locks, started documenting everything, because I was beginning to realize that whoever had taken my sister might not be finished. The chain lock from the inside wasn't just about her leaving, it was a message, a demonstration of control, of how easily someone could invade the most private spaces of my life. The truth is, I don't know if my sister left willingly or if she was taken. I don't know if the man at the library was her savior or her captor. I don't even know if the woman who lived in my house for 3 weeks was really my sister, or someone who had been studying her, learning her mannerisms, preparing to take her place. What I do know is that every night when I come home, I check the chain lock first. Because if it's engaged from the inside again, I'll know that whoever orchestrated her disappearance has come back for me, and this time I won't be as easy to fool. The photo on the hallway table remains face up now, but sometimes I catch myself staring at it, wondering if the person standing next to me in that graduation picture was already planning her own vanishing act. Or if someone else was, using her trust against her, using our family bond as a weapon. I still get the text messages, she's safe, but I've stopped believing them. Because in a world where chains can be locked from the inside by ghosts, where sisters can disappear without leaving footprints, safety is just another word for the unknown. Crime 2, it's a drop ceiling, the kind you barely look at. But I happened to glance up while folding laundry, and one tile near the corner was crooked, pushed up slightly, like it had been lifted and dropped back into place. I grabbed a stool and checked. The panel came off easily. Inside, resting across the support beams, was a roll of duct tape, a pen, and a folded grocery list. My handwriting, but I never wrote it. The paper felt different between my fingers, thicker than what I usually buy. The ink was blue, but I always use black. The items listed were strange too: bleach, trash bags, rubber gloves, rope, things I'd never need all at once. Things that made my stomach turn when grouped together like that. I set everything on the kitchen counter and stared at it. The handwriting was definitely mine, the way I looped my letters, the slight slant to the right, but the memory of writing it simply wasn't there. I tried to remember the last few weeks, searching for any gap in my routine where I might have written this list and forgot. Nothing came to mind. My neighbor knocked on the door that afternoon. She's lived next door for years, always friendly but never intrusive. Today she seemed different, more hesitant. She asked if I'd been feeling all right lately, if I'd been sleeping well. Her eyes darted toward my hands as she spoke, and I realized I was still holding the pen I'd found in the ceiling. She mentioned seeing me in the backyard late one evening, digging near the fence line. I told her she must be mistaken. I hadn't been gardening recently, but she was certain it was me. She described the clothes I was wearing, the way I moved, even the fact that I was using a flashlight. The description was accurate in every detail except for one thing. I had no memory of being outside that night. That evening I checked the area she'd mentioned. The soil was loose, recently disturbed. There was a rectangular depression in the earth about the size of a large box. The grass around it was yellowing as if something had been buried there and then removed. I knelt down and pressed my palm against the dirt. It was still soft, giving way under pressure. I found myself standing there longer than I should have, trying to piece together what I couldn't remember. The neighbor's porch light was on, and I could feel her watching me through her kitchen window. When I looked up, she quickly stepped away from the glass. Inside, I searched through my recent purchases. Credit card statements, receipts, anything that might explain the items on the list. I found a receipt from a hardware store dated just a week ago. Bleached trash bags, rubber gloves, rope, all of it purchased with my card, signed with my signature. But I had no recollection of going to that store, no memory of needing those items. The receipt was tucked inside a book I'd been reading, marking a page I didn't remember reaching. The chapter was about memory loss, about how trauma can create gaps in our recollection. The margins were filled with notes in my handwriting, thoughts about forgetting, about the mind's ability to protect itself by hiding what it can't process. I called the hardware store. The clerk remembered me, said I seemed nervous, kept looking over my shoulder like someone was following me. He mentioned that I paid in cash, which struck him as odd since I'd used a credit card for the initial transaction. When I asked what he meant, he explained that I'd come in twice that day, once in the morning with the card, and again in the afternoon with cash for the exact same items. The second purchase wasn't on any of my statements. Cash leaves no trail, no proof of what happened, but why would I buy the same things twice? And why couldn't I remember either trip? I started checking my phone, looking through photos and messages from that week. There was a gap in my camera roll, a stretch of several hours where I normally take pictures of my meals, my walks, the small moments that make up a day. Those hours were just missing, as if they'd been deliberately erased. My text messages showed conversations I didn't remember having. Brief exchanges with numbers I didn't recognize, arrangements to meet at places I'd never been. The messages were casual, familiar, like I'd been planning something important with someone I knew well, but reading them felt like looking at someone else's life. One message stood out: everything's ready, same place as before, don't forget what we discussed. It was sent from my phone to a number with no name attached. The reply was simple: I won't forget, you never let me. I tried calling the number, but it was disconnected. The area code was local, but that didn't help narrow down who it might be. The tone of the messages suggested a relationship, an understanding between two people who'd worked together before, but I couldn't place the voice those words would have had, couldn't imagine the face of the person reading them. My dreams began to change. I found myself in places I didn't recognize, having conversations with people whose faces I couldn't quite see. Always the same routine, digging, moving something heavy, the smell of bleach and earth mixed together. I'd wake up with dirt under my fingernails, even though I'd scrubbed them clean before bed. The neighbor stopped coming by. When I saw her in her yard, she'd wave politely but keep her distance. Her husband started walking their dog on the other side of the street. Small changes, but noticeable. The kind of adjustments people make when they're not sure what they're dealing with. I found the second receipt a week later, crumpled in the pocket of a jacket I rarely wear. Same items, same store, but this time paid for in cash. The timestamp showed I'd been there in the afternoon, just as the clerk had said. But I'd been at work that afternoon, hadn't I? I checked my computer's login records. There was a gap in my activity, a stretch of time when I wasn't at my desk, wasn't answering emails or making calls. The security footage from my office building might have shown where I went, but I couldn't bring myself to ask for it. Some part of me didn't want to know. Some part of me was afraid of what I might see. The grocery list was still on my counter, becoming more familiar each time I looked at it. The handwriting seemed less foreign now, more like something I might have written in a hurry under pressure. The items no longer seemed random but purposeful, part of a plan I couldn't quite grasp. I realized I was avoiding the basement, not consciously, but I hadn't been down there in weeks. When I finally forced myself to go, everything looked normal, clean, organized, nothing out of place, but the air felt different, heavier. And there was a smell I couldn't identify, something sharp and chemical that made my eyes water. The truth is, I still don't know what happened during those missing hours. I don't know who I was texting or why I needed those supplies twice. I don't know what was buried in my backyard or where it went. The ceiling tile is back in place now, perfectly aligned. But sometimes when I'm folding laundry, I catch myself looking up at it, wondering what else might be hidden just above my head, waiting to fall into view. Crime 3, I turned on the tap like always, expecting the familiar hiss of cold water. Instead, a thick drip splashed into the sink, dark, reddish, slow, not rust, not dye. I let it run. Clear water returned, but in the drain, a smear of something darker clung to the porcelain. I checked the pipes under the sink. Dry, clean, sealed tight. The strange part, there was a second toothbrush in the holder, not mine. The apartment was supposed to be empty when I moved in. The landlord assured me the previous tenant had cleared out completely. Yet here was evidence of someone else's routine, someone else's life intersecting with mine in the most intimate space possible. I picked up the toothbrush. The bristles were still soft, recently used. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the implications. I began searching more carefully. In the medicine cabinet, behind my own bottles, I found a prescription container. The label had been peeled off, but traces of adhesive remained, along with a few white pills rattling inside. The bathroom mirror had tiny scratches near the bottom corner, as if someone had been scraping something off regularly. When I ran my finger along the scratches, a fine powder came away on my skin. The building manager was evasive when I asked about the previous tenant. He shuffled through paperwork with shaking hands, mumbling about privacy policies and lost records. But I caught him glancing nervously toward the hallway, toward the stairs leading to the basement storage area. His wedding ring clinked against the desk as his fingers drummed an anxious rhythm. That evening I called the landlord directly. The woman who answered sounded different from the person who had shown me the apartment. Her voice was hoarser, more guarded. When I mentioned the toothbrush, she went silent for so long I thought the line had disconnected. Finally, she said the previous tenant had left suddenly, owing rent, and that sometimes people forget things. But something in her tone suggested she knew exactly what had been forgotten and why. I started paying attention to sounds in the building. The walls were thin, and I could hear conversations from neighboring apartments, footsteps on the stairs, water running through pipes. but there were other sounds too, muffled voices coming from below, from what I assumed was the basement. Sometimes they seemed to be arguing. Sometimes they stopped abruptly, as if someone had realized they were being too loud. The red stain in the sink appeared again 3 days later. This time I was ready. I collected some of it in a small container before the water could wash it away. Under my desk lamp, it looked more brown than red, with a metallic smell that made my stomach turn. I thought about taking it somewhere for testing, but I realized I had no idea where someone like me could get something like that analyzed without raising questions. I began documenting everything. Every strange sound, every odd interaction with neighbors, every time the building manager avoided eye contact. I noticed that the apartment directly below mine had been vacant since I moved in, according to the mailboxes, yet I regularly heard movement from that direction. Footsteps, furniture being moved, the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. The breakthrough came when I found the key. It was taped under the bathroom sink, in a spot you would only discover if you were looking for hidden things. The key was small, brass, with numbers etched into the metal. It looked like it belonged to a storage unit or a safety deposit box. I held it up to the light, feeling its weight, wondering what door it was meant to open and what secrets lay behind that door. I followed the building manager to the basement storage area. He used a different entrance than the main stairs, one I had not noticed before. Through a window at ground level, I watched him unlock a room that was not marked on any building directory. Inside, I glimpsed boxes stacked to the ceiling, furniture covered with sheets, and what looked like personal belongings sorted into careful piles. The previous tenant had not left owing rent. The previous tenant had not left at all. The building manager was sorting through someone's entire life, piece by piece, as if erasing their existence required methodical precision. But whose life was it? And why was their toothbrush still in my bathroom, as if they expected to return? I confronted the landlord at her office. She was not the woman who had shown me the apartment. That woman, she explained, had been her business partner, had been past tense. They had disagreed about how to handle difficult tenants, about what constituted proper notice, about what happened when people stopped paying rent but refused to leave. The partnership had ended badly, she said, with lawyers and accusations and threats. The prescription bottle in my medicine cabinet had belonged to someone with a chronic condition, someone who needed medication to function normally, who would become increasingly unstable without it. The scratches on the mirror were from a razor blade, used to portion out pills when money was tight and prescriptions were expensive. The red liquid in my sink was not blood. It was cough syrup mixed with something else, something that explained the erratic behavior that had led to eviction proceedings. But the toothbrush bothered me most. It represented a daily routine, a hope for tomorrow, a belief that life would continue in small, predictable ways. Someone had left it behind because they expected to return. They had hidden a key because they planned to retrieve what was rightfully theirs. They had trusted that their temporary absence would not become permanent disappearance. I never found out what happened to them. The building manager stopped working there, and the landlord sold the property to a development company that demolished it for condominiums. The basement storage room was emptied by workers who treated its contents as garbage, loading everything into trucks without examining what they were discarding. Sometimes I wonder if I could have done more, if I should have called someone, reported something, insisted on answers that no one seemed willing to provide. But I also wonder if my questions were making people nervous, if my curiosity was putting me in the same position as the person whose toothbrush I found. The person who asked too many questions and trusted too many people and believed that someone would eventually tell the truth. The key is still in my possession, small brass with numbers that do not correspond to anything I have been able to identify. Sometimes I hold it and imagine the lock it was meant to open, the secrets it was meant to protect, the person who hid it with such care. But mostly I try not to think about it at all, because some mysteries are not meant to be solved by people like me. The faucet in my new apartment runs clear every morning, but sometimes when the light hits the water just right, I think I see something that should not be there. A shadow, a stain, a reminder that some questions follow you no matter how far you move, no matter how carefully you avoid looking for answers that might change everything you thought you knew about the world around you. Crime 4, I walk that hallway every day. 7 steps from bedroom to kitchen, always 7. But that morning I counted 8. I stopped, looked back. Nothing had changed. Same photos, same scuff on the baseboard. I walked it again. 8, I measured it. The tape said the hallway was longer by almost 2 feet. I checked the floorboards. One was a different shade, slightly newer, slightly raised. I tapped it. It echoed. The house had been in my family for decades. My grandmother lived here until she passed, then my parents, now me. I knew every inch of these walls, every creak in the floor, every shadow that moved with the changing light. But this board, this hollow sound beneath my feet, this was new to me. I pressed harder, the wood gave slightly under pressure. I could feel the gap underneath, like a pocket of empty space that shouldn't exist. My fingers traced the edges. They were cleaner than the surrounding boards, less worn. Someone had installed this recently. Someone had access to my house. Someone had been here while I slept, while I worked, while I lived my ordinary life above whatever they had hidden below. I found my grandmother's toolbox in the basement. The crowbar felt heavy in my hands as I wedged it under the loose board. The wood splintered as it came up, revealing a shallow space carved into the floor joists. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a manila envelope. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The plastic crinkled too loudly in the silence. The envelope contained photographs, dozens of them, all taken from inside my house. Pictures of me sleeping, pictures of me cooking breakfast, pictures of me reading on the couch, completely unaware. The angles were impossible. These shots came from places where no one could hide, from inside walls, from behind mirrors, from spaces that didn't exist. But they did exist. Someone had created them. I studied each photograph with growing dread. In some I could see shadows in the background, shapes that didn't belong, movement caught at the edge of the frame. I wasn't alone in these pictures. Someone was watching me while I was being watched. The timestamp on the photos went back months. The earliest ones showed the house differently. Furniture in different positions, wall decorations that had been moved. Someone had been documenting changes, studying patterns, learning my routines with scientific precision. I checked every room, ran my hands along every wall, looked for more loose boards, more hidden spaces. In the bathroom behind the medicine cabinet, I found a small hole, just big enough for a camera lens. The edges were smooth, carefully drilled. In the living room, a tiny gap between wall panels revealed another opening, each one positioned for optimal viewing angles. My house wasn't my house anymore. It was a stage. I was the unknowing performer in someone else's private theater. I called the contractor who had done work here recently. He remembered installing new flooring in the hallway, said the previous owner had left specific instructions about creating storage space underneath. Previous owner, but my family had owned this house for 40 years. There was no previous owner. I drove to the county records office. The deed showed something impossible. According to official documents, the house had been sold and resold 3 times in the past year. Names I didn't recognize, signatures that weren't mine, legal paperwork that somehow existed in a reality I had never lived. The current legal owner, according to these files, was someone who shared my last name but not my first, a relative I had never heard of. Someone who had inherited the house from my grandmother through a will that contradicted everything I knew about my family's legal affairs. Back home, I found new photographs in the hidden space. Fresh ones, pictures taken while I was at the records office. Someone had been here. Someone had watched me discover their hiding place and had documented my reaction. In the newest photo, I could see myself holding the crowbar, staring down at the open floor. My face showed the exact expression I remembered feeling: shock, violation, fear. But in the background of that photo, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure. Someone standing in my hallway while I knelt on the floor. Someone who had been there with me, watching me uncover their surveillance system. Someone who had let me find exactly what they wanted me to find. I studied my grandmother's old papers. Her handwriting in personal letters didn't match the handwriting on the deed documents. The signatures were similar but not identical. Someone had practiced copying her writing. Someone who had access to examples of her signature. Someone who knew her well enough to forge legal documents that would pass casual inspection. The house phone rang. I let it go to the machine. The voice that spoke was familiar but wrong. It sounded like my grandmother, but she had been dead for 2 years. The message was brief. She said she was sorry for the confusion about the house. She said she had to make arrangements I wouldn't understand. She said she would explain everything when she came home. The message ended with breathing, long, steady breaths that continued for several minutes after the voice stopped speaking. Someone was listening, waiting, testing my reaction. I played the message again. The voice was too perfect, every inflection exactly as I remembered, but underneath the familiar words I could hear something else, a faint electronic distortion, the kind that comes from digital manipulation. Someone had taken recordings of my grandmother's voice and assembled them into new sentences, new messages, new lies. The photographs kept appearing. Each day brought fresh images documenting my growing paranoia. Pictures of me checking locks, pictures of me examining walls, pictures of me sleeping fitfully, tossing and turning as if I could sense being watched even in unconsciousness. But the strangest photographs showed me doing things I didn't remember. In some, I was moving furniture. In others, I was installing the surveillance equipment myself. In one particularly disturbing image, I was drilling the hole behind the medicine cabinet, my face concentrated and methodical. I have no memory of these activities, but the evidence was undeniable. The person watching me wasn't a stranger. The person documenting my life wasn't an intruder. The person who had access to my house, who knew my routines, who could forge my family's documents and mimic my grandmother's voice, was someone with intimate knowledge of my life. Someone who looked exactly like me. The hallway is still 8 steps long. I measure it every morning. The floorboard remains loose, the hiding space empty now except for new photographs that appear regularly. I continue to live here, continue to be watched, continue to document my own surveillance through eyes that I don't remember using. The deed to the house now shows my name as both buyer and seller. I apparently sold the property to myself through a transaction I don't recall making. The signatures match perfectly. The legal documents are flawless. According to every official record, I have always been watching myself. I count my steps every day, 7, 8, sometimes 9. The hallway changes length depending on how carefully I'm being observed. The house grows and shrinks around my awareness of being monitored. Reality adjusts itself to accommodate the space needed for surveillance. I still don't know who is watching me, but I'm beginning to suspect I don't want to find out. Crime 5, I use exactly 5, 3 letters, 2 numbers, always lined up on the freezer door. But when I reached for the handle, there were more, 7 now. The new ones were symbols, not letters. One looked like an eye. Another a shape I couldn't place. I tried pulling one off. It wouldn't budge, not even a wiggle. I checked the back. Smooth metal, no magnet at all. I touched the eye again and the freezer door opened by itself. Inside, everything was wrong. The ice maker had been dismantled. Wires hung loose like exposed nerves. The freezer light flickered with a rhythm that made my skin crawl. I could smell something metallic, sharp, cutting through the cold air. My roommate hadn't mentioned any repairs. She worked in forensics, methodical about everything. She would have told me. I closed the door and stepped back. The symbols remained, perfect alignment, too perfect for coincidence. I photographed them with my phone, but the images came out blurred, every single one. The eye symbol seemed to follow the camera lens, no matter how I angled the shot. My roommate returned that evening carrying files. She always brought work home, case folders thick with photographs I never looked at. This time she set them down and stared at the refrigerator. Her face went pale. "You moved them," she said. "Moved what?" "The magnets, they're different." I showed her my phone, the blurred photographs. She grabbed my wrist, her grip cold and damp. "Delete those now." "Why, what are they?" She opened one of her files. Crime scene photographs spilled across the kitchen counter. In the background of one image, I could see a refrigerator. The same symbols were there, arranged in the same pattern. The eye, the unidentifiable shape, others I hadn't noticed before. "This case," she whispered, "it's been closed for months. The suspect died in custody, but someone keeps recreating the scenes." I studied the photograph. The kitchen in the image looked familiar. Same tile pattern, same cabinet handles, same everything. It was our kitchen, but somehow different, older. The photograph was dated from before we moved in. "Who lived here before us?" I asked. She shook her head. "That's what I've been trying to find out. The landlord won't return my calls. The property records show gaps, years missing from the ownership history." That night I heard sounds from the kitchen, soft clicking like magnets being rearranged. I lay in bed counting, click, 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 7 distinct sounds, then silence. In the morning the symbols were gone. Only my original 5 remained, 3 letters, 2 numbers, perfectly aligned. But the refrigerator felt different now, heavier. The hum was deeper, more resonant. When I opened it, the metallic smell was stronger. I found a note tucked behind the milk carton. Paper thin as tissue, words written in pencil so light I had to squint to read them. "The patterns repeat, the symbols remember. Check the basement." We didn't have a basement. Our apartment was on the ground floor of a converted house. But when I went outside and walked around the building, I found a door I'd never noticed before. Painted the same color as the siding, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. The key was under the doormat, old brass, warm to the touch despite the cold air. The door opened easily, revealing stairs that descended into darkness. I could hear water dripping somewhere below. The same metallic smell drifted up from the depths. My roommate was at work. I called her, but the call went straight to voicemail. I tried texting, no response. I went down alone. The basement was larger than our entire apartment. Refrigerators lined the walls, dozens of them, all different models, different ages. Some looked like they belonged in museums. Others were sleek and modern. Each one had symbols arranged on its door. The same eye, the same unidentifiable shapes, others I couldn't comprehend. In the center of the room sat a desk. Files were scattered across its surface. Crime scene photographs, police reports, newspaper clippings, all featuring the same symbols, all connected to unsolved cases, disappearances, unexplained deaths. people who vanished from their homes, leaving only strange arrangements of magnets behind. I opened one of the files. The first photograph showed a kitchen identical to ours. The report was dated last year. A forensic investigator had disappeared while working on a cold case. Her apartment showed signs of a struggle, but no body was ever found. Only symbols on her refrigerator door that couldn't be removed or explained. The investigator's name was blacked out in the report, but I recognized the handwriting in the margins. My roommate's careful script, documenting details that didn't make it into the official record. I heard footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate. I grabbed the file and hid behind one of the refrigerators. The footsteps stopped. I could hear breathing, steady and controlled, professional. "I know you're down here," my roommate's voice called out. "You shouldn't have come alone." I stepped out from behind the refrigerator. She stood at the bottom of the stairs, still wearing her work clothes. In her hand was a badge I'd never seen before, not the forensics department, something else entirely. "How long have you been watching me?" I asked. "Since the day you moved in, since the symbols started appearing. We've been tracking this pattern for years. The refrigerators, the symbols, the disappearances. You're the first person to survive contact with them." She walked to the desk and picked up one of the files. The previous investigator tried to decode the symbols. She got too close, started seeing patterns everywhere. Her apartment, her car, her office. The symbols followed her until she couldn't distinguish reality from the investigation. "What happened to her?" "She became part of the pattern. The symbols don't just mark locations, they mark people. Once you see them, really see them, they won't let you go." I looked at the refrigerators around us. Each one hummed with its own rhythm, creating a complex harmony that made my head spin. The symbols on their doors seemed to pulse in time with the sounds. "Why me?" I asked. "Why can I see them when others can't?" She opened another file. This one contained photographs of me, leaving my apartment, walking to work, shopping for groceries. Always in the background, barely visible, were the symbols, on windows, on car doors, on street signs, following me like a shadow I couldn't escape. "You've been seeing them longer than you realize," she said. "The refrigerator was just the first place you noticed them consciously, but they've been marking you for months." The basement felt smaller now, the walls closing in. The humming of the refrigerators grew louder, more insistent. I could feel the symbols burning into my vision, even when I closed my eyes. "What do they want?" She closed the file and looked at me with something between pity and fear. "They don't want anything, they just are. Like bacteria or viruses, they spread from person to person, place to place. The only way to stop seeing them is to stop looking." "But I can't unsee them now." "No, you can't." We climbed the stairs together. The basement door locked behind us with a sound like breaking glass. In our apartment, the refrigerator stood silent. No symbols, no patterns, just smooth metal and my original 5 magnets perfectly arranged. But I knew they were still there, invisible but present, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves again. I could feel them in my peripheral vision, moving when I wasn't looking directly. My roommate packed her files that night. "I'm being transferred," she said. "New case, new city. The symbols are spreading faster than we can track them." "What about me?" "You'll adapt or you won't. The pattern decides." She left before dawn. I never saw her again. But sometimes when I'm reaching for the refrigerator handle, I catch a glimpse of her reflection in the door, standing behind me, taking notes, documenting everything. The symbols are everywhere now, on every surface, every screen, every reflection. They've become part of my vision, part of how I see the world. I've stopped trying to photograph them. I've stopped trying to make sense of them. But I still count my magnets every morning. 3 letters, 2 numbers. Sometimes there are more, sometimes there are less. The pattern changes, but it never disappears. I've learned not to touch them, not to move them, not to question their arrangement. Because somewhere in this city, in another apartment, someone else is reaching for their refrigerator handle. Someone else is noticing extra magnets that shouldn't be there. Someone else is about to see the symbols for the first time. The pattern spreads, the symbols remember. And I'm still here watching, waiting, counting. 3 letters, 2 numbers. Always 3 letters, 2 numbers. Crime 6, it only happened in the laundry room. The overhead bulb would flicker once when I exhaled. Nothing dramatic, just a brief stutter like it was sinking to my lungs. I held my breath, still. I breathed again, flicker. I called out to test it. Silence, but the flickering started to repeat even when I didn't move. I turned the light off. The bulb glowed faintly on its own, like it had learned my rhythm. I'd been living in this rental for 3 months when the electrical issue started. The landlord had mentioned the previous tenant left suddenly, owing 2 months' rent. Standard story. But standing in that laundry room, watching the bulb pulse with phantom energy, I felt something deeper than a wiring problem. The smell hit me first when I opened the washing machine. Not mildew or detergent residue. Something metallic, sharp, like pennies left in water too long. I ran my fingers along the rubber seal, finding nothing visible. But the scent clung to my hands afterward, no matter how much I scrubbed. I started keeping notes. The flickering followed patterns. 3 quick pulses, then darkness. A long glow, then 2 short ones. It reminded me of something I couldn't place, like a half-remembered song stuck in my head. I recorded it with my phone, playing it back at different speeds. The rhythm was too deliberate to be random. The neighbor mentioned seeing lights in my basement during the previous tenant's final weeks. She'd assumed he was doing repairs, but when I checked the basement, the only electrical work was crude splicing near the laundry room circuit. Exposed copper wire twisted together with electrical tape that was already yellowing and paling. I found the first letter wedged behind the water heater. The paper was damp, ink blurred but readable. Someone describing fear, mentioning the lights responding to their presence. The handwriting was shaky, pressed hard into the paper like the writer's hand was trembling. No signature, no date, but the letter felt recent. The second letter was taped under the laundry room sink, more coherent this time. The writer documented the same electrical behavior I was experiencing, but described it escalating. The lights weren't just flickering, they were communicating, spelling out words in some kind of code. The letter ended mid-sentence, as if the writer had been interrupted. I started sleeping poorly. The house felt different after dark, like it was holding its breath. I'd catch myself checking the laundry room multiple times before bed, making sure the light was properly off. But some mornings I'd find it glowing softly, casting strange shadows that didn't match the room's layout. The building's electrical history was buried in city records. 3 complaints filed about power surges in the past year, all from the same unit, all dismissed as tenant issues. But the dates told a story. Complaints started mild, then became more frantic. The final report mentioned persistent electrical anomalies that appear to respond to human presence in ways that defy standard electrical theory. I contacted the power company directly. The technician who'd responded to the calls agreed to meet me off the record. He was nervous, kept checking over his shoulder as we talked. He described finding the wiring in perfect condition, but witnessing the same phenomena I was experiencing. He documented everything, submitted reports that were buried by supervisors who called his findings inconclusive. The technician mentioned the previous tenant's final call, hysterical, claiming the lights were sending messages that someone was trying to communicate through the electrical system. The tenant believed someone was trapped, trying to signal for help. The power company filed it as a psychiatric emergency and stopped responding to calls from that address. I found the third letter behind loose drywall near the circuit breaker. This one was different, typed, not handwritten, clinical. It described experiments, testing the electrical responses, documenting patterns, trying to decode the signals. The writer had concluded someone was deliberately manipulating the wiring, using the house's electrical system as a communication network. The letter included a map of the basement, marking spots where the responses were strongest. I followed it with my phone's flashlight, finding disturbed soil in 3 locations. The dirt was loose, recently moved, but I couldn't bring myself to dig. Something about those spots felt wrong, like they were watching me. I called the police the next morning. The officer who took my statement was polite but dismissive until I mentioned the electrical issues. Then his expression changed. He asked specific questions about the flickering patterns, whether I'd found any written materials, if I'd noticed disturbed areas in the basement. He told me I was the 4th person to call about this address in 18 months. Each tenant had reported identical electrical phenomena. Each had mentioned finding letters, disturbed soil, the sense that someone was trying to communicate. Each had moved out suddenly, leaving their belongings behind. The officer showed me photos from previous investigations. The same crude electrical splicing I'd found, but in different locations each time. Someone was modifying the wiring between tenants, creating new connection points, new ways to manipulate the system. The letters weren't from previous tenants, they were from whoever was accessing the house, documenting their activities, possibly studying the tenants' reactions. I went back to the basement that night with a shovel. The first spot yielded nothing but roots and clay. The second was deeper, older. My shovel struck something solid 3 feet down, not bone metal. A junction box buried and connected to the main electrical line with professional-grade equipment. The setup was sophisticated, designed to monitor and control the house's power flow remotely. Someone had been using the electrical system as both surveillance and communication. Every flicker, every pattern, every response to my presence was being recorded and controlled from somewhere else. The basement modifications weren't random, they were part of a larger system, possibly connected to other properties. I traced the buried cables as far as I could follow them. They led toward the neighboring property, disappearing under the shared fence line. The neighbor who'd mentioned seeing lights in my basement during the previous tenant's stay. The same neighbor who'd been unusually helpful, asking detailed questions about my electrical problems, offering to contact repair services she knew personally. The final letter was in my mailbox the next morning. Not addressed, just folded paper with my name written in that same shaky handwriting. But this time the message was current, referencing conversations I'd had, places I'd searched, people I'd contacted. Someone had been watching, documenting my investigation just as they documented the electrical responses. The letter ended with coordinates, latitude and longitude numbers that led to a storage facility across town. Unit number included. Key taped under the welcome mat of my front door, placed there sometime during the night while I slept. I drove to the storage facility with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The unit contained electrical equipment, monitoring devices, and detailed files on 12 different rental properties. Each file documented the same pattern: electrical modifications, tenant responses, behavioral observations. My file was the thickest, including photos of me I'd never seen being taken. But the most disturbing discovery was a lease agreement for my current address, signed by someone claiming to be the property owner. The signature didn't match the landlord I'd been paying rent to. The real question wasn't who had been manipulating my house's electrical system. It was who I'd been giving my money to for 3 months, and why they'd wanted me in that specific location. I left the storage unit exactly as I'd found it and drove home. The laundry room light was on when I arrived, flickering in that familiar 3-pulse pattern. I stood underneath it, breathing steadily, waiting for it to sink to my rhythm like it always did. But this time I was the one watching, the one documenting, the one asking questions that might not have comfortable answers. Because sometimes the scariest realization isn't discovering you're being watched, it's realizing you might be exactly where someone wanted you to be all along. Crime 7, I was pulling up the carpet in the guest room, old, musty, overdue for replacement. As I peeled it back, I noticed the nails weren't factory placed. They were random messy, like someone had reattached it in a hurry. Beneath the padding was a hatch, small, square, nailed shut. I got a crowbar and lifted one edge. Inside was nothing but insulation and a single shoe, not mine, tied tightly, stuffed with something soft. The shoe was small, child-sized, white canvas with pink laces, the kind parents buy for school pictures. I lifted it carefully, feeling the weight distribution was wrong, too heavy in the toe, too light in the heel. The stuffing wasn't padding, it was papers, rolled tight, compressed into the narrow space where toes should go. I unrolled them with trembling fingers: medical records, lab results, a child's name I didn't recognize, but the address was mine, this house. The dates went back 15 years when the previous owners lived here. The couple who sold to me had mentioned them only briefly, a family with children who moved away suddenly. The records showed regular checkups, normal childhood visits, then something changed. Emergency room visits, unexplained bruising, fractures that didn't align with the given explanations. The handwriting in the margins grew increasingly urgent. Social services involvement, court dates scheduled. Then nothing, the records stopped abruptly. I called the real estate agent who handled my purchase. She remembered the previous owners vaguely. A quiet family, she said. The parents were eager to sell quickly, priced below market value. She'd found it odd they refused to let potential buyers inspect the upstairs rooms thoroughly. Always accompanied viewers, never left them alone. The guest room had been a child's bedroom, pink walls under my fresh paint, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling I'd covered with primer, a growth chart penciled on the door frame that I'd sanded smooth. I searched through county records, public databases, anything that might tell me what happened to that family. The parents had indeed moved across country, but there was no record of the children in their new location. No school enrollments, no medical transfers, no forwarding addresses for minors. I contacted the hospital listed on the medical records. The physician who signed them still worked there. When I mentioned the address and showed him copies of the documents, his face changed. He remembered the case, the injuries that kept coming, the explanations that never quite made sense, the parents who became increasingly defensive with each visit. He told me he'd filed reports, multiple reports, but before any investigation could progress, the family disappeared, moved without notice. The case went cold because there was no one left to investigate. I asked about the child whose name was on the records. He hesitated before answering. Said she'd been sweet, quiet, always holding tight to her father's hand during appointments, always wearing shoes that looked too big for her feet. That night I went back to the hatch, used a flashlight to examine every corner. The insulation had been disturbed in places, compressed and rearranged. In one corner, pressed against the subflooring, I found something else. A small bracelet, plastic beads spelling out a name, the same name from the medical records. I called the detective who'd handled missing persons cases in that jurisdiction. He remembered the report, filed by concerned teachers when the child stopped attending school. But by the time they investigated, the house was empty. New owners moved in within weeks. Case closed due to lack of evidence and no crime scene to examine. Except there had been a crime scene right under my feet. I spent days researching, making calls, following paper trails that led nowhere. The parents had covered their tracks well. New identities in a new state, jobs that paid cash, no digital footprints, but children don't just vanish without leaving traces. I hired a private investigator, someone who specialized in cold cases. She found things the police had missed, school records that showed declining grades before the disappearance, teacher notes about behavioral changes, a guidance counselor who remembered asking the child about injuries only to be told she was clumsy, accident-prone. The investigator also found something else. Burial permits issued to the county coroner during that same period, unclaimed remains, bodies that arrived without identification, without family to claim them. Children who died from trauma the system couldn't or wouldn't investigate thoroughly enough. But records get sealed, time makes people forget. Statute of limitations protects those who wait long enough. I had evidence of abuse, I had medical records, I had a child's belongings hidden beneath my floor, but I didn't have a body, I didn't have witnesses. I had a story that sounded like speculation, not proof. The investigator suggested I contact the current authorities, present what I'd found. But what exactly had I found? Papers that could have been hidden by anyone. Objects that proved someone lived here once, not that they died here. Suspicions built on coincidence and timing. I went back to the guest room one final evening, sat on the floor where the carpet used to be, traced the outline of the hatch with my finger, tried to imagine what happened in this room, what those final days were like for a child whose parents decided she was a problem that needed to disappear. The shoe sits on my kitchen table now, still stuffed with papers I've read dozens of times, still tied with laces that someone else's hands secured. I know what happened in this house. I know why the carpet was nailed down wrong, why the family left so quickly, why there are no forwarding addresses for children who should still be alive. But knowing and proving are different things, and sometimes the truth lives in the space between what we can demonstrate and what we understand in our hearts. The case remains open in my mind, closed everywhere else. The parents live somewhere under different names, probably with different children now. And I sleep above a guest room where justice came 15 years too late, delivered by accident to someone who can't do anything meaningful with it. Some nights I hear sounds from upstairs, footsteps that might be settling wood, voices that could be wind through loose siding. The rational part of my mind explains these things away, but the part that found those records, that held that shoe, that traced those disappearances through official channels that led nowhere useful, knows better. This house keeps its secrets. I just happened to find one of them. Crime 8, I know that remote like the back of my hand, but when I picked it up, the bottom row of buttons was different. 2 of them were unlabeled, and one was now a switch instead of a button. I pressed it. The TV didn't respond, but the security monitor blinked. A different feed appeared, black and white, grainy, showing what looked like my own kitchen from a slightly higher angle. I don't have cameras. The image flickered, then steadied. I could see myself standing in the living room, holding the remote, staring at the monitor. The perspective was wrong though, too high, like someone had mounted equipment in the corner where the ceiling meets the wall. I walked to that exact spot and ran my fingers along the molding. Nothing, just paint and plaster. But the feed kept rolling. I switched channels on the security monitor. Feed 2 showed the bedroom. Feed 3, the bathroom. Feed 4 captured the front porch from an angle that would require a camera hidden in the neighbor's tree. I counted 12 different views of my house, inside and out. Angles I'd never considered, corners I'd never noticed someone could see from. The previous tenant had lived here for 18 years before moving out, an older woman who kept to herself. The landlord mentioned she'd been particular about privacy, always closing curtains, never letting repair workers stay unsupervised. I'd found that odd at the time. Now it made sense. I discovered the first recording device 3 days later, tucked behind the bathroom medicine cabinet. Not professional grade, but not cheap either. The kind someone would buy if they wanted to watch without being detected. The adhesive was fresh, maybe a month old. The previous tenant had moved out 6 weeks ago. When I called the landlord, his voice changed. He became careful with his words, like someone listening to himself speak. He claimed he'd never heard of any surveillance equipment, never given anyone permission to install cameras. But when I mentioned the previous tenant's name, he paused too long before responding. The woman at the hardware store recognized me when I brought in the first device. She said I'd been in before, asking about wireless cameras and recording equipment, except I'd never been to that store. She described someone who looked like me but wasn't quite right, same height, similar build, but different mannerisms. Someone who knew enough about me to pass for me from a distance. I started keeping a journal of everything I found. 7 cameras inside the house, 4 outside. Motion sensors in places that made no sense unless someone wanted to track every movement. A listening device in the landline phone I rarely used. The equipment was expensive, professional, coordinated. This wasn't random. Someone had planned this carefully. The recordings went back months. I found files on a hidden hard drive in the basement, labeled with dates from before I'd even applied to rent the place. Someone had been watching the house while the previous tenant still lived there. Watching her, then watching me, documenting patterns, routines, habits. In one recording, I saw myself having a conversation with someone just outside the camera's view. I remembered that conversation. It was with the cable technician who'd come to set up my internet. But in the recording, I could hear myself giving answers to questions I didn't remember being asked. Information about my work schedule, my family, whether I lived alone. The technician's van had been parked in a blind spot where none of my neighbors' security cameras could see it. I called the cable company. They had no record of sending anyone to my address on that date. No work order, no technician assigned, but my internet had been installed and it worked perfectly. When I checked my credit report, I found inquiries I hadn't authorized. Someone had been researching me, building a profile, learning about my financial situation, my employment history, my rental history. The inquiries started 3 months before I'd even begun apartment hunting. The previous tenant left no forwarding address. The landlord claimed he didn't know where she'd gone, said she'd paid her last month's rent in cash and disappeared. But I found her name on voter registration records from the next county over. When I drove to the address, the house was empty, with a "for rent" sign in the yard. The new neighbors said the previous occupant had moved out suddenly, in the middle of the night. They'd seen a moving truck, but no one loading it. Just one person, a woman, carrying a single suitcase to a waiting car. I started noticing the same car parked on different streets near my workplace, near the grocery store I frequented, near the coffee shop where I bought my morning drink. Different parking spots, different times, but always the same faded sedan with tinted windows. When I tried to get closer, it would pull away before I could see the license plate clearly. The locksmith who changed my locks when I moved in had left something behind. I found it wedged behind the door frame, a tiny device that would record every time the lock was turned. He'd installed it while I was signing paperwork, hidden it while I wasn't looking. When I called his company, they said he'd quit 2 weeks after changing my locks. No forwarding information, no explanation. The mail carrier mentioned that someone had been asking about me, claiming to be a relative trying to reconnect. They'd wanted to know about my schedule when I received packages, whether I lived alone. The description matched no one I knew, but it matched the person the hardware store clerk had described, someone who looked like me but wasn't quite right. I found the listening post on the 4th floor of the apartment building across the street. The window faced directly into my living room, and someone had set up equipment there months ago. The building manager said the unit was supposed to be vacant, but someone had been paying rent in cash, using a name that didn't match any official records. When I finally accessed all the recorded files, I discovered they weren't just watching me. They were watching everyone who came to the house, delivery drivers, guests, repair workers, creating detailed profiles of everyone in my life, mapping my social connections, building a comprehensive picture of my entire world. The most disturbing recordings were the ones of me sleeping. Someone had been watching me for hours each night, documenting my sleep patterns, my movements, even my dreams when they caused me to speak aloud. The angle suggested the camera was inside my bedroom, but I'd searched every inch and found nothing. The investigation led to a storage unit rented under a false name, containing thousands of photographs of people in their homes. Not just me, but dozens of others. The same systematic surveillance, the same careful documentation, the same invasion of privacy repeated across multiple victims. The police found no fingerprints, no DNA evidence, no clear connection between the victims. Just the photographs and the equipment, abandoned as if someone had finished their work and moved on. The case remains open, but no arrests have been made. The surveillance equipment was purchased with untraceable cash from different stores across multiple states. The storage unit rental was paid for with money orders bought from locations with no security cameras. I moved out 3 months later, but sometimes I still wonder who was watching and why. Whether they moved on to someone else or whether they're still out there, building new profiles, watching new victims, perfecting their system. The remote control I found that day disappeared from the evidence locker before the investigation was complete. The police have no explanation for how it vanished or who might have taken it. I still check for cameras wherever I live now, but I've never found any. Sometimes I wonder if that's because I've gotten better at looking or because whoever was watching has gotten better at hiding. Crime 9, I opened the fridge and looked inside, just water, eggs, nothing unusual. But as I shut the door, I caught a sliver of light at the edge. I opened it again. The bulb seemed normal. I closed it slower this time, keeping my eyes on the seal. The light never went out. I emptied everything and pulled the fridge forward. Behind it, taped to the back panel, was a small mirror angled upward. It had a crack down the center, and someone had written a word across the glass with grease. Watching. The apartment had been empty for 3 weeks when I took the keys from the landlord. My predecessor had left suddenly, he said, owing 2 months' rent. personal emergency, family matters. The usual vague explanations landlords give when they don't want to elaborate. But standing in that kitchen, staring at the greasy word on the mirror, I realized there might have been more to her departure than anyone wanted to admit. I called the landlord back. He sounded different when I mentioned the mirror, less casual, more careful with his words. She had complained about feeling watched, he admitted. Thought someone was getting into her apartment. He changed the locks twice, installed a security chain. Nothing satisfied her. She became increasingly paranoid, he said, emphasizing that word like it explained everything away. But paranoia assumes the fear is unfounded. I started going through the apartment more carefully. In the bedroom closet, I found a shoebox pushed far back behind hanging clothes. Inside were photographs, dozens of them taken from various angles around the building. The parking lot, the entrance, the hallway outside this very door. Each photo had a date written on the back in careful handwriting. They spanned 6 months, ending just before she moved out. The photos showed patterns, the same car parked in different spots. A figure in a dark jacket appearing in multiple shots, always partially obscured, always just out of clear focus. In one photo, taken from her living room window, I could see someone standing across the street, looking up at the building. The timestamp showed it was taken deep into the night. I took the box to the building manager. She was an older woman who had lived in the complex for decades. She knew everyone's business, she claimed, but when I showed her the photos, her expression changed. She recognized the car immediately. It belonged to a maintenance worker who had been fired months ago for entering apartments without permission. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was that she had fired him after my predecessor moved out. I asked to see his employment records. The dates didn't align. According to the paperwork, he had been let go before the photos were taken. Yet there was his car, documented in image after image. Either the records were wrong, or someone else had been driving his car, or my predecessor had been taking photos of a phantom. I decided to examine the other apartments. The building manager was reluctant, but agreed to let me check the units that shared walls with mine. In the apartment directly above, I found another mirror. This one was taped inside a kitchen cabinet, positioned to reflect down through a gap in the floorboards. The gap was so narrow I almost missed it, but when I held a flashlight up to it, I could see straight down into my kitchen. The tenant above had lived there for 5 years, a quiet man who worked irregular hours. The building manager described him as helpful, always willing to fix small problems for other residents. He had access to maintenance tools, knowledge of the building's layout. He had offered to help my predecessor when she complained about feeling watched. I started paying attention to the sounds above me, footsteps that seemed to follow my movements from room to room, creaking that corresponded with my own activities. When I showered, I heard water running upstairs. When I cooked, I smelled food that didn't match what I was preparing. One evening, I came home to find wet footprints in my hallway. They led from the front door to the kitchen, then stopped at the refrigerator. The prints were larger than mine, made by boots with a distinctive tread pattern. I followed them back to the door, but they ended at the threshold. There were no prints in the hallway outside. I called the police. The officer who responded was polite but skeptical. No signs of forced entry. Nothing stolen. The footprints could have been made by maintenance workers, delivery personnel, any number of legitimate visitors. He took a report but made it clear that wet footprints didn't constitute evidence of a crime. That night I moved a chair in front of the refrigerator and sat watching it. Around midnight I heard the soft click of the kitchen door opening, not my front door. The kitchen door that led to the back stairway, an entrance I had assumed was sealed. I had never checked if it actually locked. A figure moved carefully through the darkness, familiar with the layout. He opened the refrigerator and stood there, not taking anything, just looking. The light illuminated his face enough for me to recognize him. The helpful neighbor from upstairs, the one who had offered to fix my predecessor's problems. I stayed motionless in the chair, barely breathing. He closed the refrigerator and moved to the window, adjusting something I couldn't see. Then he was gone, back through the kitchen door, up the rear stairs to his own apartment. I waited until morning to investigate. The window had a new scratch on the glass, as if someone had been testing whether it would open from the outside. And taped to the frame, almost invisible, was a thin piece of wire that would trigger a small noise if the window was disturbed. I gathered all the evidence I could find, the photos, the mirrors, the wire, everything. But when I went to present it to the police, I discovered something that changed everything. My predecessor hadn't moved away suddenly. She had been found dead in her car 3 states away. Apparent suicide, the report stated. Carbon monoxide poisoning in a closed garage. The case had been closed quickly. No investigation into her claims about being watched. No follow-up on her complaints to the landlord. Her death was classified as the tragic end to a struggle with paranoia and mental illness. But I had her photographs. I had the mirrors. I had evidence that someone really had been watching her, entering her apartment, monitoring her movements. Someone who was still living directly above me. I moved out the next day. I never reported what I found to the authorities. I told myself it was because they wouldn't believe me, because the case was already closed, because she was already dead and nothing could bring her back. But the real reason was simpler and more disturbing. I realized that if I pushed too hard, if I made too much noise about what I had discovered, I might end up like her. Another paranoid tenant who couldn't handle the stress of city living. Another tragic case of mental illness leading to an unfortunate end. Sometimes I wonder if the neighbor upstairs knew I had found his mirrors. If he watched me pack my belongings and leave, if he was already planning how to modify his system for the next tenant, how to be more careful, more subtle. I wonder if anyone is living in that apartment now, if they have noticed that the fridge light stays on, if they have found the word written in grease on the mirror, if they are beginning to feel watched. Story 10, The Unveiled Whispers. The new occupants believed it was merely peeling wallpaper, a minor blemish in their charming Victorian-era home. Yet as they delicately stripped away the layers, a hidden narrative began to reveal itself. Inked onto the wall, repeated incessantly, was a single name, Alina Winters. The name, occupying every inch in a frenzied, uneven scrawl, stirred a sense of unease within the couple's hearts. It was a name unknown to them, absent from any official records or historical documentation. Intrigued, they turned to the vast expanse of the internet for answers. Amidst the digital sea, they uncovered a solitary result, a decades-old missing persons case, shrouded in mystery and shadows. The photograph of the vanished woman bore an uncanny resemblance to the previous owner of their new abode, the enigmatic Margaret Cavendish. Michael and Sarah Klein had never planned on diving headfirst into renovations. The allure of the old house, with its intricate woodwork and lofty ceilings, had been enough to captivate them. However, fate had other designs in store for them. It all began with a subtle water stain in the master bedroom, a subtle discoloration creeping beneath the faded floral wallpaper. With gentle curiosity, they peeled away the layers, each unveiling a glimpse into the past. Outdated patterns from the 70s gave way to stripes of a bygone era until, at last, the third layer exposed something unexpected, a name. etched in darkness against aged beige paper. "Eleanor Winters," Sarah murmured, her fingers tracing the desperate scrawl. The discovery left them unsettled, prompting late-night investigations and restless contemplations. Their quest for truth led them down a winding path of property records and archived articles. Eleanor Winters, reported missing in the depths of winter, haunted their thoughts as they delved deeper into the mystery. The missing woman's story intertwined with Margaret Cavendish's enigmatic past, blurring the lines between reality and illusion. As days turned into nights, their home transformed into a nexus of intrigue and uncertainty. The renovation project lay forgotten as they devoted themselves to unraveling the tangled threads of the past. A retired detective's recollections shed light on the cold case, breathing life into a tale long forgotten. Eleanor Winters, a spectral presence from the past, cast a shadow over the present, urging them to seek closure where none seemed possible. Forensic teams descended upon their home, turning it into a hub of investigation. Layers of wallpaper peeled away, revealing secrets long buried beneath the surface. Ink, aged with time, spoke of a fractured mind and a troubled soul. Beneath the floorboards, a hidden space yielded a trove of identities, each bearing the same haunting visage. Eleanor Winters and Margaret Cavendish, intertwined in a macabre dance of deception and tragedy. DNA and fingerprints wove a tapestry of deceit, unraveling a web of lies spun by a fractured mind. Rebecca Eldridge, the missing puzzle piece, emerged from the shadows of the past, her truth laid bare for all to see. The excavation of their backyard unearthed long-buried secrets, casting a harsh light on a crime long forgotten. Eleanor's remains, a silent witness to the passage of time, brought forth a reckoning decades in the making. Rebecca Eldridge, in her myriad forms, faced the consequences of her fractured reality. The walls that bore witness to her descent into madness now stood as silent sentinels of a tragedy long concealed. For Eleanor's family, closure came in the form of belated justice. For Michael and Sarah, their dream home became a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface, a testament to the enigmatic whispers that echo through the walls of time. Story 11, the mysterious package appeared on her doorstep, lacking any trace of its origin or intended recipient. Just a plain cardboard box, dampened by the morning dew, beckoning her with its enigmatic presence. Sarah Miller hesitated, knowing it wasn't meant for her, the name on it unfamiliar Daniel Whitaker. The sensible choice would have been to leave it untouched, a stranger's parcel. Yet curiosity whispered its seductive call, urging her to unravel the mystery within. With cautious hands, she tore open the tape, anticipating mundane contents like books or clothes. Instead, nestled inside was a VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing a simple directive: watch alone. In the quiet solitude of her home, Sarah held the black plastic cassette, sensing an unspoken weight that transcended mere physicality. The tape felt like a forbidden secret, its worn edges a testament to hidden truths waiting to be unveiled. The handwritten note bore the urgency of its author, each stroke etched with a plea for understanding. Outside, the suburban neighborhood carried on its usual rhythm a distant dog's bark, children's laughter, the drone of a lawnmower. Oblivious to the enigma that had just crossed Sarah's threshold. Bringing the package into her kitchen, doubt gnawed at her resolve. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance in her world of familiar faces. 4 years in that house, and never had she encountered that name. The Johnsons, the previous occupants, had bid farewell to mail and memories long ago. Yet a persistent tug of intrigue led her gaze to the dusty VCR, a relic of days gone by. Something about the tape called to her, a whisper of secrets waiting to be heard. Against rational judgment, she inserted the tape. Static danced on the screen before morphing into a dimly lit room, bathed in a singular lamp's glow. The camera angle askew, a man shrouded in shadows sat before her, his voice a solemn cadence in the hushed air. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," he began, his words laden with a burden too heavy to bear alone. "If you're watching this, they've found you, and they'll find me too." The man leaned closer, unveiling a face weathered by turmoil, haunted by unseen specters. "I'm innocent. I need you to believe that. They set me up, planted evidence to make me the perpetrator, but I never laid a hand on her." As the tape unfolded, Sarah glimpsed the stark reality of a man wronged, a pawn in a game of deception. Daniel's narrative painted a picture of a life upended by a crime he didn't commit, a tragedy that tore apart all semblance of truth and justice. Detective Eliza Ramirez, too, found herself ensnared in the web of lies spun around Catherine Walsh's murder, a tale of corporate deceit, of whistleblowers silenced, and innocence sacrificed on the altar of greed. The investigation took a chilling turn as whispers of conspiracy echoed through the shadows. Catherine Walsh's crusade against PharmaCorp, the pharmaceutical giant with blood on its hands, exposed a darkness lurking beneath polished facades. The tapes became breadcrumbs leading to a truth obscured by layers of deception. Sarah received a second package, a trove of damning evidence that unraveled the sinister plot woven against Daniel Whitaker. In a race against time, Detective Ramirez followed the trail of breadcrumbs to uncover the malevolent forces at play. The truth lay buried beneath layers of deceit, waiting for a courageous soul to unearth it. Daniel's fate hung in the balance, a man wronged by a system designed to crush the innocent. Justice, elusive yet inevitable, finally arrived. The tape, the silent witness to a man's redemption, became a relic of a past marred by falsehoods. Sarah and Daniel's paths crossed once more, a silent acknowledgement of the intricate dance of fate that had brought them together. In the end, the wrong address proved to be the right one, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in darkness. The VHS tapes, symbols of hidden truths and untold stories, stood as a testament to the power of curiosity and courage in the face of deception. The truth, a fragile yet resilient entity, found its voice in the most unexpected of places, echoing through time and space, guiding lost souls back to the light. Story 12, the vacant house held a silent history untouched by time. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of a young woman who vanished, leaving the rooms to gather dust and shadows. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they encountered a mystery veiled in stillness. The bedroom, sealed shut, harbored secrets within its walls. With a creak and a push, the door relented, revealing a realm frozen in time. The air hung heavy, pregnant with the weight of years gone by. A bed neatly made, a mirror polished to perfection, a haunting contrast against the layers of neglect. A solitary candle stood as a sentinel, its essence spent, leaving behind trails of wax like crystalline tears frozen in time. And there upon the desk lay a notebook open to a page fresh with ink, a silent witness to the past. Detective Morgan, a seeker of truths in the shadows, delved into the notebook's whispered confessions as technicians danced with dust, seeking answers in the silence. The script belonged to Elise Winters, a name whispered by the wind, a ghost in the pages of her own story. Aged 26, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of ink that danced between the lines. "I know he's watching me tonight," the words echoed from the final entry, etched with urgency and fear. A tale woven with threads of paranoia and peril, a plea trapped within the confines of a forgotten room. The pen had pressed harder, leaving behind echoes of a soul in distress, a heart beating against the bars of uncertainty. The room bore witness to a life interrupted, a destiny entwined with shadows of deceit and treachery. Elise, a paralegal with eyes that saw beyond the facade, had stumbled upon a truth veiled in corporate lies. Her path had led her down a rabbit hole of deception, where numbers danced to a tune of manipulation and greed. The photographs whispered tales of a woman too wise to vanish without a trace, too grounded to be swept away by the winds of fate. The room, a silent witness to a story untold, held no clues of struggle or strife, only a facade of normalcy carefully preserved. As the investigators combed through the remnants of a life interrupted, a hidden chamber revealed its secrets, a key, a flash drive, a key to Pandora's box. The digital whispers uncovered a symphony of corruption, a dance of shadows cast by the hands of the powerful. The truth unfurled like a dark flower in bloom, shedding light on a web of deceit that spanned across realms of power and influence. Elise's voice echoed through the recordings, a beacon of truth in a sea of lies, a martyr to a cause she never chose. The path to justice twisted and turned, leading to the doorstep of a man cloaked in shadows. Vincent Harriman, a puppet master in a play of shadows, stood accused of crimes that echoed through the halls of power. The evidence, a tapestry woven with threads of blood and betrayal, painted a portrait of a man consumed by his own darkness. The hidden passage, a gateway to the underworld of secrets, whispered of a truth buried beneath layers of deceit. Harriman's fate sealed in the whispers of the wind, his legacy tarnished by the light of justice. The room, a silent witness to a tale of loss and redemption, stood as a monument to a life cut short by the hands of greed. Elise's voice echoed through the halls of justice, a whisper in the wind that carried her truth to the ears of the world. And so the house stood empty once more, a sentinel to the ghosts of the past, a testament to the power of truth in a world veiled in shadows. The light in the upstairs window flickered, a beacon of hope in a world consumed by darkness. Elise's legacy lived on, a testament to the power of one voice in a symphony of silence. The room she never truly left became a shrine to justice, a testament to a life cut short but never forgotten. Story 13. In the stillness of the night, a wooden plank betrayed its age with a quiet creak beneath her weight. A subtle shift, imperceptible to most, yet enough to capture her attention. Intrigued, she knelt down, her fingers tracing the edges of the loose board, sensing the hidden secret it concealed. The floor beneath her feet whispered of mysteries untold. With delicate precision, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow void beneath the foundation of her new abode. Sarah Coleman peered into the shadows that yawned beneath her, a chill creeping up her spine as Detective Morgan Reed stood by, a silent sentinel in the dimness. The fear in Sarah's eyes spoke of more than just the discovery of a hidden chamber. It echoed the violation of sanctuary, the encroachment of a malevolent presence into what should have been a haven of new beginnings. Touch nothing, Detective Reed's voice sliced through the silence, a command laced with authority and concern. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, unveiling walls adorned with a tapestry of surveillance photographs capturing Sarah's every move, each step chronicled in a macabre display of obsession. The cottage had passed into Sarah's possession from the hands of an enigmatic figure named Walter Green, a recluse who had departed this world without leaving a trace of kin. The property had stood vacant, a silent witness to its previous owner's secrets, before beckoning Sarah with promises of charm and renovation. "I never met him," Sarah murmured, her voice a fragile thread in a heavy air. The neighbors spoke of his solitude. The basement was supposed to be sealed off. That's what the reports claimed. The arrival of crime scene investigators heralded the beginning of a meticulous dance with evidence. Every photograph, every fingerprint, every piece of the cryptic puzzle was catalogued and scrutinized, unveiling a timeline of obsession that stretched back years before Sarah's arrival. As the investigators delved deeper, a sinister portrait emerged of Walter Green's fixation on Sarah, a fixation that had grown from a quiet infatuation into a chilling plan shrouded in shadows. The psychologist's words lingered in the air, a haunting echo of the darkness that had lurked beneath the floorboards. Detective Reed's pursuit of the truth led her to an unlikely informant, a former co-worker of Walter's, his eyes haunted by shadows of guilt and fear. In hushed tones, he revealed fragments of conversations, hints of a delusion that had festered in Walter's mind like a malignant seed. A key, a storage unit, a replica of Sarah's past life meticulously recreated in eerie detail, each discovery was a step deeper into the abyss of Walter's twisted psyche. The calendar marked with a date that hung like a specter of doom over the tableau of obsessions and delusions. The revelation of Walter's past, his descent into madness, painted a grim picture of a life haunted by shadows of unrequited longing. The fragile line between reality and delusion blurred, a tapestry woven with threads of obsession and isolation. Sarah's decision to part ways with the tainted cottage was a bittersweet farewell to a chapter marked by shadows of what could have been. Her steps echoed through the empty rooms, carrying with them the weight of a truth too dark to bear alone. The closing of the case brought a sense of finality, yet the specter of what could have been lingered like a ghost in the shadows. Detective Reed's silent vigil over Sarah spoke volumes of the bond forged in shared darkness, a bond that transcended words and boundaries. Life continued its ebb and flow, the cottage passing into the hands of new owners, unaware of the secrets that lay buried beneath its floorboards. The hidden chamber was sealed, the echoes of the past fading into whispers carried away by the winds of time. For those who bore witness to the chilling saga of the room beneath the floor, it stood as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the unseen dangers that lurk in the shadows, of the monsters that dwell in the hearts of men, and of the fragile threads that bind victim to fate. Story 14. The apartment lay dormant for months, a silent witness to time passing. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they carried with them only modest expectations, perhaps some dust, a few remnants of the past left behind. Yet there was one door that resisted their efforts to open it, stubbornly locked from the inside, a closet, its secrets concealed within. After much persistence, the landlord succeeded in breaking the seal, revealing not just old coats or discarded items, but something far more unsettling. The walls bore witness to a story of desperation, etched in deep, uneven scratches that spoke of confinement and struggle. And nestled in the shadows, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its screen illuminated by a single unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator, felt a chill run down her spine as she surveyed the scene. It wasn't the presence of blood or violence that unsettled her, but rather the silent screams of those scratch marks, a silent plea for freedom. Forensics now, she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently documented the haunting marks. The cryptic message on the phone simply stated, "I know what you did." The anxious landlord, his palms damp with nervousness, revealed that the previous tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unpaid rent. A quiet young woman, unassuming, "Disappeared 6 months ago," he muttered, avoiding the closet's gaze. Forensic analysis unveiled a grim truth. Within those scratches, the DNA embedded in the walls belonged mostly to Emma Caldwell, the missing tenant, along with 2 other samples. One was a mystery, while the other belonged to Derek Mercer, a man supposedly deceased for years. The puzzle deepened, sending ripples of unease through the investigation. Emma's apartment painted a picture of interrupted life, neglected mail, a solitary coffee mug in the sink, a bed meticulously made. Her phone records hinted at a sudden cessation of contact with her sister, replaced by a flurry of calls from an unidentified number before her disappearance. As the pieces of the puzzle slowly aligned, a pattern emerged. Emma had mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured a shadowy figure entering her building, his identity obscured by a baseball cap and secrecy. The revelation of Derek Mercer's fingerprints inside the closet doorknob raised chilling questions. Had he faked his demise, and what sinister connection did he share with Emma? The tendrils of the investigation extended further, unraveling a web of dark secrets and hidden truths. A missing woman, Lynette Porter, surfaced in the shadows of the past, her presence entwined with Emma's fate. The trail led to a secluded property owned by Mercer's kin, where a harrowing discovery awaited the captive form of Lynette, emaciated and broken, a living testament to Mercer's twisted desires. Journals chronicling Mercer's obsession, photographs of his victims, and damning video evidence painted a macabre portrait of his depravity. The manhunt intensified, spanning across jurisdictions as the hunt for the elusive predator escalated. Mercer's capture at a bus terminal marked a pivotal moment in the investigation, unveiling a man driven by a dark compulsion to inflict suffering and torment. His calm demeanor belied the horrors he had wrought, his actions shrouded in a cloak of malevolence. The trial exposed Mercer's elaborate charade, his meticulous plan to evade justice and prey on unsuspecting victims. Emma's fate remained a haunting mystery, her final moments etched in the silent screams of those walls. As the gavel fell, sealing Mercer's fate with a life sentence, a sense of closure washed over the courtroom. Lynette Porter's resolute words echoed in the chambers, a beacon of resilience in the face of darkness. The legacy of the case reverberated through the department, reshaping protocols and investigative strategies for missing persons cases. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door as a somber reminder, a silent testament to the enduring strength of those who fight to survive in the shadows of the night. Story 15, the mysterious tale of the old box hidden in the attic, unfolded like a slumbering dream, shrouded in the whispers of forgotten memories. Beneath layers of neglect and dust, it lay undisturbed, a relic of bygone days. Within its weathered confines, faded Polaroids whispered of celebrations long past, of moments captured in time. Innocuous scenes of joy and togetherness filled the photographs, casting a gentle light on the forgotten past. But as her fingers brushed the last photo, a chill seized Rebecca's heart, stirring shadows long forgotten. In that final image, the familiar setting of her living room unfolded before her eyes, frozen in a moment of eerie familiarity. A family unknown to her sat smiling, oblivious to the figure lurking in the shadows behind them. A man, his presence barely discernible in the dimness, stood watching, a silent sentinel from another time. The stillness of the scene contrasted sharply with the unease that gripped Rebecca's soul, setting her on a path shrouded in mystery and trepidation. Descending the creaking stairs, the weight of the photograph heavy in her hand, Rebecca felt the walls of her house closing in around her. The once spacious rooms now felt suffocating, echoing with whispers of the unknown. Placing the photo on the stark kitchen counter, bathed in harsh light, she was struck by the undeniable truth: the family in the picture belonged to her home, yet they were strangers in her reality. Enter Detective Morgan, a figure of quiet resolve, his weathered jacket a shield against the encroaching darkness. With a gaze that missed nothing, he delved into the enigma laid before him, tracing the echoes of the past with a steady hand. The journey into the shadows of history began, unraveling a tapestry of vanished families and whispered secrets. The trail led back through the annals of time, tracing the footsteps of those who had once called the house home. Each family, a brief chapter in a haunting saga of disappearances, leaving behind only echoes of their existence. The Sutherlands, the missing link in a chain of enigmatic events, their sudden departure shrouded in silence and uncertainty. As the investigation deepened, revelations emerged, painting a portrait of a house steeped in darkness and deceit. Forensic analysis peeled back the layers of time, revealing the meticulous staging of the photographs, the presence of an unseen watcher haunting the shadows. A pattern emerged, a chilling repetition of families vanishing without a trace, leaving behind only questions and the lingering presence of the enigmatic Samuel Whitfield. A spectral figure from the past, his presence woven into the very fabric of the house, a ghostly architect of mysteries unsolved. Beneath the cold embrace of the basement, the truth lay buried, a macabre gallery of preserved memories frozen in time. The missing families, unearthed from their earthen tombs, bore silent witness to the horrors that lay hidden within the walls of the house. Rebecca, a mere pawn in a game of shadows and whispers, found herself cast adrift in a sea of uncertainty, her world upended by forces beyond her comprehension. The discovery of a hidden crawl space, a journal filled with cryptic musings, hinted at a darkness lurking just beyond the veil of reality. As the investigation unfolded, the tendrils of the past reached out, ensnaring all who dared seek the truth. The specter of Samuel Whitfield loomed large, a phantom orchestrating a sinister dance of manipulation and deception. In the stillness of the night, the echoes of the past reverberated, a haunting melody of fear and intrigue. The Polaroid camera's mechanical whir pierced the silence, a harbinger of unseen forces at play, a reminder that some secrets were never meant to be revealed. And so the house stood silent, a sentinel of forgotten shadows and whispered secrets, its windows dark and foreboding. The mystery of Samuel Whitfield lingered, a specter haunting the minds of those who dared to seek the truth, a phantom of the past destined to remain forever enigmatic. And in the darkness, new photographs developed, capturing the essence of new families, new homes, and the unseen watchers in the shadows, a testament to the enduring legacy of a house steeped in mystery and intrigue. Story 16. In the twilight of a closing costume shop where shadows lingered among the forgotten relics, a woman's gaze settled upon a mask nestled on a dusty shelf. Its features, delicate yet disquietingly lifelike, beckoned to her like a siren's call. The cashier hesitated as she placed it on the counter, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "That's not ours," he murmured cryptically. Perplexed, she searched for a tag, but none could be found. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to bring the mask home, unaware of the enigma she had invited into her life. As night descended like a velvet curtain, she was roused from slumber by a soft rustling, a whisper of fabric shifting in the stillness. Her heart quickened as she scanned the room, only to find the mask missing from its resting place on the dresser. There it sat upon her nightstand, facing her with an unsettling intensity. The woman known as Catherine Reed, would soon become a tragic figure in a tale that defied logic and reason. It was her neighbor who stumbled upon the eerie scene, drawn by the sight of an ajar front door spilling morning light into the darkened interior. What was meant to be a simple return of a borrowed book turned into a discovery that would haunt the minds of investigators for years to come. Catherine lay lifeless on her bedroom floor, the mysterious mask nowhere to be seen, as if it had vanished into the shadows from whence it came. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, where the air was heavy with unanswered questions. The rhythmic click of shutters served as a backdrop to the hushed voices of the officers as they combed through the perplexing tableau before them. "No signs of forced entry," one officer remarked, his pen scratching notes in a leather-bound pad. The detective's keen eyes swept the room, noting subtle details that whispered of a sinister presence. A drawer left slightly ajar, a lipstick-stained water glass on the nightstand, seemingly mundane, yet laden with ominous implications surrounding the woman who would never awaken from her eternal slumber. The medical examiner, his expression grave, bent over Catherine's lifeless form, searching for answers in the silence of death. "Cause of death unclear upon initial inspection," he intoned, his gaze fixed on her frozen visage of terror. "No outward signs of trauma or struggle." Gesturing to her features, he continued, "The fear etched on her face speaks volumes." The detective knelt beside him, her voice barely above a whisper as she voiced the chilling realization. Something frightened her to the point of no return. Catherine, a woman of quiet demeanor and keen discernment in her profession as an art appraiser, had led a life shrouded in meticulous precision and a passion for authenticity. Colleagues spoke of her uncanny ability to detect forgeries with a single glance, a skill that now seemed to have led her down a dark and foreboding path. Could it be that her astute eye had unveiled a truth too perilous to comprehend? The threads of the mystery began to unravel with the discovery of microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips, a clue that hinted at a sinister connection to a past shrouded in shadows. The fibers, a blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance defying classification, spoke of a malevolent force at play, weaving a web of darkness that spanned decades. Security footage from the costume shop unveiled a perplexing encounter between the cashier and the enigmatic mask, a moment tinged with inexplicable dread. The owner's denial of ownership and the subsequent revelation of the mask's origins only deepened the enigma, hinting at a lineage tainted by tragedy and death. The investigation took a macabre turn as records of similar deaths emerged, each victim linked by the acquisition of an otherworldly mask that heralded their demise with a silent scream frozen on their lifeless faces. A retired detective, a custodian of dark secrets, shared a revelation that pierced the veil of the unknown, a ritual of soul transference, ancient symbols hidden within the very fabric of the masks, a legacy of horror passed from one unwitting host to the next. A journal, clandestine and foreboding, emerged from the shadows of Catherine's home, its pages a testament to her descent into a nightmare realm where reality blurred with nightmares. Her frantic scribbling spoke of a malevolent sentience lurking within the mask, a predatory entity that hungered for souls, moving unseen in the dead of night, its gaze fixed upon those who dared to uncover its true nature. The truth, a chilling specter that defied rational explanation, emerged with a clarity that sent shivers down the detective's spine. The cause of Catherine's death, a harrowing revelation in its simplicity, extreme fear leading to cardiac arrest, a heart stilled by the touch of terror so profound that it defied mortal comprehension. Yet the darkness that enveloped Catherine's final moments held one final twist, a figure captured on surveillance footage. a phantom wearing her likeness like a macabre masquerade, moving with a mechanical precision that bespoke a sinister puppeteer pulling unseen strings. The hunt for the missing mask, a quest born of desperation and dread, yielded no fruit, leaving a void in the hearts of those who sought closure. Months passed, and whispers of a peculiar mask surfacing in a distant vintage shop reignited the embers of a mystery thought to be buried in the annals of the unsolved. The cycle of death and rebirth, of souls claimed and identities usurped, continued unabated, a grim testament to the insatiable hunger of an entity that defied mortal reckoning. The detective, burdened by the weight of truths too terrible to speak aloud, kept Catherine's journal close at hand, a talisman against the encroaching darkness that lurked at the edges of her consciousness. In the quiet hours of night, when shadows danced upon the walls and the wind whispered of unseen terrors, she would awaken with a start, a cold sweat clinging to her skin. She would rise, her steps cautious as she checked each window and door, securing the locks against an unseen intruder that lingered just beyond the threshold of perception. And in those moments of vigil, she would steel herself against the encroaching dread, knowing that somewhere out there, the mask awaited its next unwitting victim, its empty gaze fixed upon the fragile veil that separated the world of the living from the realm of the damned. For the mask, a harbinger of nightmares and a vessel of unspeakable horrors, bided its time, patient and unrelenting in its quest for a new host. And when the day dawned upon yet another unsuspecting soul, it would be greeted by the soft sound of movement in the dark, the cold touch of empty eye sockets fixed upon their trembling form, a prelude to a fate sealed in shadows and whispers that echoed through the endless corridors of time. Story 17. She had always avoided venturing into the attic, finding it a place of shadows and secrets. However, when a fierce storm struck, causing a leak in the roof, she had no choice but to confront the forgotten space. As she ascended the creaking stairs, the air grew heavy with the scent of dust and age, and the attic greeted her with its collection of abandoned relics, shrouded in layers of cobwebs. Nestled in the darkest corner, almost hidden from view, was an old dollhouse. Its presence sent a shiver down her spine, for within its tiny rooms lay a chilling revelation. The miniature furniture inside was meticulously arranged, each piece hauntingly detailed, but what caught her eye and made her stomach churn was not the furniture, it was the figures. These were not ordinary dolls, they were delicate, hand-carved replicas of her own family. Every tiny figure mirrored her loved ones perfectly, capturing their essence with eerie accuracy. Yet there was one crucial difference. Among the miniature figures representing her family, one stood out. The figure meant to be her was standing by the attic door, gazing back at her with unseeing eyes. Rebecca Morgan traced a trembling finger along the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the imprint where the wooden figure of herself stood. The discovery sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with the draft whispering through the rafters. This dollhouse did not belong here. This was not her childhood home. It was a temporary abode her family had only recently occupied. The unfolding of events began with Rebecca's urgent call to the authorities. Law enforcement descended upon the suburban residence, finding a family in turmoil, huddled in fear in their living room, reluctant to return to the upper floors. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their distress as a prank or a figment of their imagination, a product of adjusting to a new environment. Yet the intricate details of the dollhouse figures gripped Detective Harmon's attention. Each miniature replica captured a unique trait of the family members: the father's thinning hair, the son's favorite hoodie, even the small birthmark on the mother's hand. The turning point came when forensic analysis revealed fingerprints on the dollhouse that did not match those of the family. More unsettling discoveries followed. Microscopic cameras hidden within the eyes of the miniature figures were linked to a sophisticated surveillance system concealed beneath the dollhouse. Reviewing the family's movements in the days prior unveiled a disturbing reality. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse did not merely mirror the family's whereabouts on the evening of the discovery, but replicated precise moments from various days, hinting at a prolonged period of voyeurism. We were facing more than a mere case of stalking, Detective Harmon later divulged. The perpetrator displayed an unprecedented level of fixation rarely encountered in criminal psychology. The investigation took a twisted turn with the revelation of a concealed entrance to the basement, camouflaged behind a false wall in the pantry. Within this clandestine space, investigators unearthed evidence of someone living beneath the unsuspecting family's feet. Traces of consumables, water containers, and a makeshift bedding indicated a covert presence lingering below for weeks. The absence of forced entry confounded the investigators. Property records disclosed that the house had remained vacant for nearly a year before the Morgans moved in. The former owners, an elderly couple, had passed away in quick succession, leaving their son to oversee the estate sale and subsequent rental of the property. Despite interviews with neighbors, scant information surfaced, save for one elderly resident recalling sporadic lights emanating from the house during its unoccupied phase. A breakthrough emerged through digital scrutiny. Analysis of the surveillance system linked to the miniature cameras led investigators to an external server, tracing the data to a modest apartment across town. Inside, a chilling tableau unfolded before them. The walls bore a collage of photographs featuring the Morgan family and previous occupants of the house. Detailed journal entries chronicled the daily routines of each resident with unsettling precision. The most disturbing find was a workshop housing numerous half-finished dollhouses, each representing a distinct home in the vicinity. The occupant of this eerie sanctuary was identified as Martin Wells, the son of the deceased homeowners. Financial records hinted at escalating debts following his parents' demise. Rather than selling the property outright, he had ensconced himself in the hidden alcove, monitoring the new tenants while reaping rental profits. The dollhouse was his command center, elucidated the forensic psychologist engaged in the case. Each miniature figure symbolized a subject under his surveillance. Rebecca's position by the attic entrance was not a threat, but a tacit acknowledgement of her detection of his voyeuristic scheme. During interrogation, Wells maintained an unnervingly composed demeanor as he elucidated his motives. They dwelled in my dwelling, slept in my parents' chamber. I needed assurance of their regard for the sanctity of my home. When prompted about the meticulously placed figures, his response was chillingly simple. I desired their awareness of my perpetual vigilance. Psychological assessments unveiled a convoluted narrative of possessive fixation. Wells, grappling with the emotional fallout of losing his childhood abode, constructed an elaborate mechanism to retain dominion over both the property and its occupants. The dollhouse morphed into his conduit for asserting control over the physical space and its inhabitants. The Morgan family bade farewell to the tainted abode, never to return. Rebecca recollected that the most haunting aspect was not the discovery of the dollhouse itself, but the realization it signified. Someone had been observing us all along, measuring our existence, transforming us into mere pawns. The true horror lay not in the dollhouse, but in comprehending that in his perception, we were mere playthings to be manipulated and watched. Wells faced a litany of charges encompassing stalking, privacy invasion, illegal surveillance, and trespassing. The case instigated a reevaluation of real estate disclosure regulations concerning deaths on properties and the obligation of agents to ensure a thorough vacancy check before new tenants assume occupancy. During sentencing, the judge condemned the unprecedented violations suffered by the Morgan family. You didn't merely intrude into their domicile, you shattered their sense of security and independence. You scrutinized their intimate moments and replicated them for your gratification. What unnerves criminologists about this case is how long Wells might have persisted undetected if not for Rebecca's chance encounter with the dollhouse. Scrutiny of his journals hinted at a protracted history of surreptitiously inhabiting residences, traversing from one property to another, constructing dollhouses to surveil each household under his watch. The Morgan family resettled in a distant locale, yet Rebecca confessed in her victim impact statement to lingering apprehensions, habitually checking closets and recesses. She purged their new residence of all miniature replicas and dollhouses. Occasionally, I still sense a spectral gaze upon me, she confessed. I muse if somewhere out there, an unseen hand is orchestrating a diminutive version of my existence within an undiscovered dollhouse. Story 18, The Unseen Watcher. The listing from the realtor had made no mention of a basement. The blueprints, meticulously examined, revealed no trace of it either. Yet, as the family embarked on the task of removing the worn carpet in their new home, they stumbled upon a hidden door concealed beneath the flooring. The handle, heavy and rusted with age, resisted their efforts until three of them combined their strength to pry it open. A rush of stale air enveloped them, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of damp earth. Descending the steps into the darkness below, they braced themselves for what they thought would be a space for storage. Instead, they were met with an eerie sight: a solitary chair illuminated by a swaying light bulb, casting shadows that danced across the walls. And there, hanging behind the chair, was a series of photographs depicting them. The Mercer family had chosen to move into the suburban abode during the harsh winter months, when the darkness crept in early, shrouding the neighborhood in an eerie stillness. The house, with its weathered siding and creaking floors, held a charm they had found appealing a sense of character and history. Little did they know the extent of history woven into the very structure they now called home, and how violently it would collide with their present reality. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, the crime scene already cordoned off with fluttering yellow tape. The distressed call had come from Mrs. Mercer, her voice quivering as she recounted the shocking discovery beneath their own living room. Instructing her team to meticulously document every detail before further exploration, Connors donned her latex gloves with a practiced air. The camera flashes illuminated the stairwell in erratic bursts as the forensic experts captured the scene below. The wooden steps protested under their weight as they descended into the small basement, resembling a standard bedroom in size, with stark concrete walls painted a somber gray. The single chair, bolted to the floor at the center, stood beneath the harsh glow of the bare bulb, its light casting eerie shadows that flickered in the unseen drafts. However, it was the wall adorned with photographs that seized their attention, 37 images arranged meticulously in a timeline. These go back almost 4 weeks, noted Connor's partner, examining the timestamps on the back of each print. Look at this one: Mrs. Mercer sleeping, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the children in their rooms. The absence of forced entry, the untouched security system, and the lack of stolen items only heightened the family's sense of violation and unease. Further investigation delved into the unsettling history of the property. Previous owners' fingerprints lingered throughout the basement, hinting at a presence that transcended time and ownership. Each family that had resided in the house over the past decade had left within a year, selling at prices far below market value. None had mentioned the existence of a basement. Interviewing the contractor who had renovated the house years prior unveiled a chilling revelation: the basement room did not exist in his memory of the property's structure. Digital forensics uncovered a hidden memory card within the light fixture, unveiling hundreds more images of not just the Mercers, but of all previous families. Intrusive snapshots captured intimate moments, mundane routines, and vulnerable instances, all observed by an unseen entity. The discovery of audio recordings concealed within the basement further heightened the sense of intrusion, revealing conversations held in the most private spaces of the home. As the investigation unraveled, a labyrinthine passageway hidden behind the photographs led to a monitoring station, equipped with surveillance equipment and a journal filled with meticulous observations on each family. The handwriting matched that of Edward Kelvin, the original builder of the property, whose death during construction raised suspicions as to his true fate. The final entry in the journal ominously foretold the arrival of the next family. Fingerprint analysis confirmed the ghastly truth: Edward Kelvin had never departed from the house he had constructed. He had embedded himself in its hidden recesses, a silent observer of the families that passed through. A manhunt ensued, culminating in the discovery of Kelvin curled within the walls, his emaciated form a stark contrast to the elaborate surveillance network he had orchestrated. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as mere actors in his private drama, his detachment bordering on delusion. The psychological evaluation revealed a fractured mind, viewing the families as temporary guests in what he deemed his eternal domain. The Mercers, like those before them, abandoned the property, leaving behind a haunting legacy of violated privacy and unease. The trial shed light on Kelvin's meticulously planned surveillance network, designed to observe and document the unwitting residents within the house. Unmoved by the verdict, Kelvin retreated into the recesses of his mind, where the house still stood as a monument to his distorted reality. The property was eventually demolished, erasing the physical remnants of his voyeuristic regime. Yet for the families who had unknowingly lived under his watchful gaze, the scars of intrusion lingered, casting shadows over their sense of security. In quiet moments, they found themselves glancing at air vents, light fixtures, and corners, questioning if they were truly alone in their new dwellings. The unseen watcher had left a mark far deeper than physical presence, a lingering doubt that whispered through the walls, reminding them that safety was but an illusion in a world where unseen eyes may always be watching. Story 19. The old Polaroid captured a birthday celebration frozen in time, with smiling faces and flickering candles, a scene of ordinary joy. However, when the daughter inherited the box of vintage photos, a chilling discovery awaited her. Among the familiar faces, there lurked a mysterious figure in the background, always just beyond the group's awareness. A man, shrouded in shadow, stood at the edge of the light cast by the candles, his presence unsettling yet unnoticed by the family. With each photo, he edged closer. Sarah Winters unearthed the box of memories while sorting through her late mother's attic following the funeral. The cardboard box, simply labeled Memories, held a collection of faded photographs capturing moments from her childhood. Instead of nostalgia, the photos became the gateway to a haunting revelation. In the initial picture, the enigmatic figure was barely discernible, a dark silhouette lingering on the fringes of her 7th birthday party. By the subsequent photo, he had advanced inside the house. In the third snapshot, he loomed behind her uncle, his presence ominous yet overlooked by those in the frame. Trembling, Sarah reached out to her father, questioning the identity of the unsettling man in the background of every photo. His response was a hesitant silence, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "There shouldn't be anyone besides family," he finally murmured. After sending digital copies of the Polaroids to her father, his shaken voice confirmed the impossibility of a stranger infiltrating their cherished memories. Detective Marcus Reed attentively studied the photographs spread across his desk as rain tapped against the precinct windows, casting shifting shadows over the evidence. With a methodical gaze, he traced the progression of the shadowy figure through the family gatherings. The detective's interest peaked as he observed the deliberate movement of the mysterious man towards the children, culminating in his proximity behind Sarah's younger self in the final photo. Suggesting the photographer as a possible explanation, Reed's doubt lingered in his tone. However, Sarah clarified that her mother had been the sole photographer, setting the timer before joining the group in each frame. Creating copies and initiating a case file, the detective delved into an investigation that defied logical explanation. Efforts to identify the unknown man proved futile, as he remained strategically obscured in every photograph, evading recognition. Yet a breakthrough emerged when digital enhancements unveiled distinct features: a scar, a ring, a partial reflection hinting at a hidden identity. Dental records linked the shadowy figure to Robert Keller, a maintenance worker who had vanished after suspicions arose in connection to unsolved child abductions spanning decades. Keller's ties to the rental properties where the family gatherings took place unveiled a grim reality. Items discovered beneath the foundation of his former residence, a hair clip, a toy car, a bracelet, corroborated the chilling connection to missing children from past cases. The pieces of evidence painted a harrowing picture of concealed horrors that had haunted families for years. Alone in her apartment, Sarah found herself surrounded by the unraveling of a dark past captured in the photographs. The news of identified remains near one of the vacation properties confirmed the grim fate of the missing children. As she gazed at the final birthday photo, the figure in the shadows remained a haunting presence, symbolizing the invisible threat that had eluded detection for so long. The revelation of interconnected mysteries brought closure to grieving families, even as it unveiled the sinister truth that had lurked beneath the surface. The shadow in the family photos, once unnoticed, now stood exposed in the light of justice, his malevolent presence finally acknowledged after years of secrecy. Sarah carefully returned the photos to the box, each image a testament to the unseen dangers that linger within the captured moments of our lives. Story 20, The Hidden House on the Outskirts of Town, was a mystery shrouded in silence. Neglected by time, its darkened windows and crumbling porch hinted at forgotten secrets. No one laid claim to the house, no one recalled its origins. But when a group of wanderers strayed too close, they stumbled upon a chilling sight: names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep like ominous messages. Among the list, freshly carved, was a name that sent shivers through them all. "That's mine," one whispered, voice quivering with fear. In the dead of night, a call came through to dispatch, a routine report of trespassing. The caller was Mason Wright, the lead hiker who discovered his own name engraved on the abandoned house. Responding officers anticipated nothing more than a case of juvenile mischief, a prank gone awry, but what they uncovered defied all logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as darkness blanketed the forest. Her flashlight pierced the shadows, revealing the weather-worn exterior of the structure. 27 names, faded and fresh, adorned the eastern wall, each telling a haunting tale. And at the bottom, Mason Wright, the carving still smelling of fresh wood. "I've never been here before," Mason protested, his words hanging in the frigid air. How could anyone know my name? The investigation commenced with background checks on each name inscribed. The findings sent a chill down the spines of the detective team. Every name belonged to a soul reported missing over the past 40 years, vanishing without a trace while hiking alone. Forensic experts meticulously documented each carving, noting the nuances in depth, technique, and weathering. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, linked to a case from decades past, a young woman who ventured into the woods and never returned. Detective Keller delved into Mason's past, finding no ties to the other names on the wall, no connections to the eerie enigma. The focus shifted to Mason's companions, particularly Emily Chen, whose photographs revealed a spectral figure lurking in the background. A tall, thin silhouette obscured by foliage appeared in multiple shots. We saw no one else on the trail, Emily swore. We would have remembered. A search of the house's interior unveiled a macabre tableau in the basement. Personal effects of the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on shelves, each item labeled with a corresponding name from outside. Bloodstains, faint yet telling, marred the concrete floor, hinting at a grim history of attempts to erase the past. As tensions escalated, Mason reported eerie incidents, whispers in the night, phantom footprints, spectral figures haunting his every step. The discovery of land records tied the house to a reclusive hunter, Victor Blackwood, who had vanished years ago without a trace. His journal, unearthed in the forest, painted a sinister picture of a predator fixated on human prey. A manhunt ensued, spanning jurisdictions as helicopters scanned the woodland with thermal imaging. But Blackwood remained elusive, his presence a spectral specter haunting the shadows. Mason, consumed by paranoia, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a cryptic message on his bedroom wall. Months passed, the investigation ongoing, until a startling find in Blackwood's hideout, a workshop harboring tools of the hunt and a freshly carved name belonging to the lead forensic technician who had probed the house. Authorities set a trap, surveillance tight around the house, waiting for the predator to return. One fateful night, sensors blared an alert, capturing the figure of Blackwood approaching the house. Tactical teams closed in, only for the cameras to falter, losing sight of the phantom hunter. When vision was restored, both Blackwood and the technician had vanished into the night. The house stands under watchful eyes to this day, a sentinel to the unsolved mystery that lingers. Mason and the technician remain missing, their fates intertwined with the enigmatic house and its spectral past. The investigation persists, fueled by fresh disappearances in the forests, the names on the wall echoing through the minds of those who dare to speak them. A chilling legend that haunts the depths of the woods, where the unspoken names reside in eternal silence. Story 21. In the quiet anticipation of a new life's arrival, she set out to repaint the nursery, a sanctuary for the little one soon to come. The walls, once adorned in a faded blue, held echoes of stories untold within their ancient layers. As the brush glided with the first stroke of white paint, a hidden mystery began to unravel. Faint letters emerged from beneath the surface, almost whispering their secrets at first, then sharpening into clarity. A message, cryptic and chilling, etched beneath the layers of time. Don't let it hear you. Her breath hitched in her chest as she took a step back, her eyes scanning the room. And there, amidst the fresh paint, were tiny handprints impossibly high on the wall, beyond the reach of any child. A sense of unease settled in, marking the beginning of a tale that would come to be known as the Whispering House Case. The young couple, unaware of the dark secrets veiled within the Victorian-style home they had purchased at a strangely low price, found themselves at the center of a mystery that defied explanation. Detective Sarah Klein, with a notebook clutched in her hands, arrived at the doorstep of the expectant mother. Paint-splattered overalls hugged her swollen belly, exhaustion etched into the shadows beneath her eyes. As the woman recounted the discovery of the eerie message and the ghostly handprints, a shiver ran down the detective's spine. The tale unfolded of the previous owner's abrupt departure in the dead of night, leaving behind a wake of speculation and unanswered questions. No moving trucks, just essentials hastily packed into a car, fleeing some unseen terror. Inside the historic home, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed through the corridors, each creak of the floorboards a whisper from the past. In the nursery, the unfinished wall bore the remnants of the cryptic message, a chilling reminder of a sinister presence that lingered within the walls. Delving into the property's history, the detective uncovered a pattern of transient occupants and unsettling reports of children's whispers and unseen watchers. The house's dark past unraveled before her, leading back to Alina Blackwood, a widow who once ran an orphanage on the premises, where 5 children had vanished without a trace. The unsettling truth emerged as the detective unearthed a sealed room behind the nursery wall, containing the poignant remnants of the lost children. Their small belongings, untouched by time, bore witness to a tragedy long forgotten, a tragedy that now demanded justice. With each layer peeled back, the mystery deepened, revealing a tale of twisted ambition and unspeakable horrors. Alina's twisted belief in harnessing the life force of orphaned children to prolong her own existence had led to unspeakable atrocities hidden within the very walls of the house. The revelation of the children's fate, their remains arranged in a macabre circle beneath the basement floor, brought closure to a decades-old mystery. Yet, as the nursery walls were torn down and the house condemned, an unsettling presence lingered, a spectral echo of the past that defied explanation. In the end, as the detective closed the case file, one haunting image remained, a photograph capturing the glowing handprints of the lost children, a silent testament to the enduring legacy of a house haunted by its dark history. And so, the whispering house faded into obscurity, a chilling reminder that some secrets are buried too deep to ever truly be forgotten. Story 22. The aged apartment exuded a sense of history with its groaning heating system and rattling pipes, creating a symphony of familiar sounds. But one evening, a faint yet distinct voice floated through the vents, catching her attention. It wasn't the typical hum of a neighbor's conversation. It was a whisper calling her name. Curiosity piqued. She leaned in closer, her heart quickening as a breath of chilly air brushed past her cheek. Then, almost teasingly, the voice uttered, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the center of the empty apartment, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that had been forcibly removed. Around her, the forensics team meticulously documented the scene with flashing cameras. Alina Reeves, the missing woman they had been searching for, had been discovered after 7 days of disappearance, hidden within the ventilation system. Officer Patel relayed information from his notepad, detailing Alina's reports of hearing voices through the vents, which the building management had dismissed as mere quirks of the aging building. Shaw knelt by the vent, observing the deep scratch marks that seemed to have been made by desperate fingernails from the inside, not by any tools. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher known for her bright smile and thriving houseplants, had exhibited signs of paranoia before vanishing. Her sister had mentioned Alina's belief of being watched and spoken to through the apartment vents, attributing it to work stress. As Shaw delved deeper into the investigation, she uncovered unsettling clues within the apartment. From fibers matching Alina's clothing caught in the vent to a mysterious fingerprint on the inside of the vent cover. Listening to eerie audio recordings from Alina's phone, Shaw couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that lingered in the air. The history of the building revealed a chilling pattern of tenants leaving abruptly, citing strange noises and even hallucinations of voices emanating from the walls. Harold Weber, the building superintendent, raised suspicions with his nonchalant demeanor, especially when questioned about the previous occupants of apartment 4B. A breakthrough came when a hidden maintenance passage was discovered in Alina's bathroom, leading to a secret space within the walls where someone had been living undetected, observing and whispering. Shaw's team unraveled Weber's sinister activities through meticulously stored audio recordings and personal belongings of his victims found in a rented storage unit. Weber's arrest shed light on his disturbing obsession with the tenants, manipulating them into a twisted symbiotic relationship with the building. The trial exposed his meticulously planned actions, leading to a swift guilty verdict. Yet even as justice prevailed, Weber's parting words to Shaw echoed a haunting truth. The building remembers, the whispers never stop. Now the once vacant apartment building remains occupied, but not for long. Residents speak of mysterious sounds echoing from the vents, whispers in the walls, and chilling drafts that carry spectral voices. The aging heating system continues to groan. The pipes still rattle, a melodic reminder of the dark secrets that dwell within the building's walls. Story 23, the gentle current whispered secrets as it carried the morning light along its glassy surface, lulling the fisherman into a peaceful rhythm. But amidst the tranquility, a peculiar sight caught his eye, a lone suitcase bobbing near the shore, almost unnoticed in the stillness of the waters. At first glance, it appeared as if someone had carelessly discarded a heap of old garments. However, as he approached, a noxious odor crept into his senses, thick and suffocating, impossible to ignore. The suitcase, adorned with chains that bore the scars of time, held a sinister mystery within its rusted confines. When the authorities pried open the weathered case, it did not reveal mere clothes as expected. Instead, within its grim interior lay a haunting sight, a tangle of hair, fingers frozen in a macabre grip, and at the very depths, a chilling note that whispered, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer stood at the desolate scene, a handkerchief pressed delicately against her nose as she surveyed the tragic tableau before her. The victim, a woman in her 30s with the remnants of dark hair and ghostly skin, bore the marks of her watery grave. The meticulous work of the medical examiner painstakingly documented every detail before the body was tenderly lifted away from its eerie resting place. But amidst the horror, what struck Mercer most profoundly was not the methodical disposal of the victim, but the eerie sense of care that had been taken with her appearance. Nails impeccably manicured, hair styled with precision, draped in garments of luxury, she was not merely discarded, she was presented. The name of the victim emerged as Catherine Walsh, a real estate agent of high repute renowned for her expertise in selling exclusive properties. Divorced, childless, she resided in solitude within an affluent neighborhood, her life shrouded in ambition, precision, and a veil of secrecy. Her sudden disappearance, reported by a concerned assistant when she failed to attend a pivotal showing to affluent clients, raised alarm bells among her colleagues. She would never miss such an opportunity, the assistant insisted, her voice trembling with disbelief. That sale meant everything to her. As investigators delved into Walsh's meticulously maintained modern abode, a sense of unease settled upon them. Everything was immaculate to the point of suspicion, designer furnishings meticulously arranged, every surface devoid of even a whisper of dust. The refrigerator housed perfectly portioned meals labeled by the day. The closet a symphony of color-coordinated attire and shoes carefully swathed in protective sheaths. An anomaly lurked within her home office, a drawer slightly ajar, concealing a leather-bound journal that beckoned to be explored. The final entry within whispered of unseen eyes. He's watching again. Same car, different plates. Digital breadcrumbs in Walsh's email unveiled a disturbing pattern, countless messages from shadowy accounts, all bearing the same ominous phrase, "I see your perfection." Each missive sent at the exact moment on different days. Her browsing history painted a picture of a woman haunted by unseen threats, her searches dominated by inquiries into home security and self-defense mechanisms. Detective Mercer pieced together the fragments of Walsh's life, connecting the dots between the chilling crime scene and the unsettling revelations within her private domain. "Our perpetrator is not driven by fury," she confided to her partner. "This is not a crime of passion. This is a meticulously orchestrated ritual." A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source, a local pawn shop owner recognizing Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace among the pawned treasures. The culprit emerged as Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker with a penchant for blending into the shadows. Surveillance footage unveiled his stealthy comings and goings from Walsh's abode, sometimes laden with maintenance equipment, other times shrouded in anonymity. A search of Linden's modest dwelling unfurled a tapestry of horror walls adorned with clandestine snapshots of Walsh and other women, their likenesses eerily similar, captured without their knowledge. Some portraits were marred with crimson crosses. Walsh stood as the third enigma in a series of chilling obsessions. Concealed behind a false panel within Linden's closet lay a shrine of the damned personal artifacts of each victim meticulously arranged. A lock of hair entwined within a brush, tissues kissed by lipstick, keys, and receipts. Each shrine accompanied by a journal chronicling the minutiae of their lives, their routines, their quirks. The interrogation chamber turned frigid as Linden was led in, his demeanor a mask of impassivity that belied the darkness that dwelled within. Confronted with the damning evidence, he offered a chilling confession devoid of remorse. "They were flawed," he intoned, his voice devoid of emotion. "They paraded perfection, but I saw through their facade. Catherine's desk drawer was always in disarray. Her lipstick application harbored imperfections. Her perfection was a deceit." The pursuit of the two missing victims hinted at in his cryptic note led investigators to remote locales, where two additional suitcases surfaced, each bearing the weight of lives extinguished too soon. The victims bore a haunting resemblance to Walsh, both real estate agents who had crafted personas of unblemished precision. During Linden's trial, a pall of sorrow draped the courtroom as the families of the victims bore witness to the unraveling of his meticulously constructed facade. His methodical stalking, his elaborate preparations, his twisted acts of perfection, correction, all laid bare before the eyes of justice. As the gavel fell, sealing his fate with a sentence of life imprisonment without reprieve, Detective Mercer found a sense of closure settling upon the case. Yet within the recesses of her mind, questions lingered like shadows in the night. What inner demons propelled Linden to seek out these particular women? What fractured mirror within himself was he attempting to mend through his monstrous acts? The river, ever the silent witness to the ebb and flow of human frailty, continued its meandering journey downstream, carrying away the vestiges of tragedy in its tranquil embrace. But in the confines of the precinct, upon Mercer's desk, lay the chilling remnants of Linden's obsession, reminders that beneath the veneer of normalcy, beneath the facade of perfection, darkness may lurk, waiting to ensnare the unwary. And in the hush of the night, in the stillness of the soul, the most perilous predators may not be those that prowl in the shadows, but those that dwell among us, concealed in plain sight, biding their time for a solitary flaw to betray their monstrous truth. Story 24. It started with a pocket dial, a random jumble of static and muffled sounds that almost went unnoticed by the operator. But then a voice broke through the noise. A woman's voice, trembling with urgency, whispered, "He's here." And then silence engulfed the line. The number traced back to an old, neglected house, standing empty and forgotten for years. There were no signs of forced entry, no disturbances in the stillness of the abandoned rooms. Yet in the dimly lit kitchen, coated with a layer of dust, a phone rested on the counter, its screen eerily aglow. The call had been made mere minutes ago. Detective Morgan Reed found herself replaying the recording for the 5th time. The whispered words lingered in her mind, desperate, filled with terror and utterly impossible. This abandoned property once belonged to the Sullivan family, who had fled after a devastating fire ravaged the west wing of the house. No one had resided there since. The caretaker swore by the emptiness of the place, adamant that no intruders had trespassed its thresholds in years. Background check on the number, Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The reply came swiftly, revealing the number belonged to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter of the former owners, who had perished in a car accident 3 years prior. As Morgan gazed at the phone enclosed in an evidence bag, the enigma of the case deepened. A deceased woman's phone making calls from a deserted dwelling, it defied all logic. The dust around the phone seemed disturbed only where it sat, as though it had materialized out of thin air. The forensic examination yielded little, with no discernible fingerprints save for smudges too faint to identify. No trace of footprints leading in or out of the house. The doors remained locked, the windows sealed shut. The recording of that cryptic call became the focal point of their inquiry. 11 seconds of static, a faint sound of breathing, and 5 haunting words. Voice analysis confirmed a chilling revelation. The voice matched that of Catherine Sullivan with a staggering 98% certainty from recordings of the past. The timestamp indicated the call had taken place at the exact moment of Catherine's demise 3 years earlier, down to the minute. Morgan and Walsh meticulously interviewed everyone connected to Catherine. Her father, now remarried, appeared genuinely perplexed. Her mother, residing alone in a modest apartment, crumbled upon hearing the recording. "That's my Katie," she murmured. "She sounds so frightened." Catherine's former boyfriend, Mark Jennings, had a solid alibi for the night of the call. He was at work, confirmed by multiple witnesses and security footage. Moreover, the house had stood empty. The call should not have occurred, yet it did. The investigation hit a standstill until a call from Catherine's mother reignited the flames of curiosity. "I found something among her old possessions," she quivered. "Katie kept a journal, the final entry. You must see it." Within the pages of the journal lay a detailed account of Catherine's relationship with Mark, a love that soured into control, isolation, and ultimately fear. The last entry bore a chilling message. "He discovered I'm leaving. He's enraged. If harm befalls me, it won't be an accident." Confronted anew, Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of the journal's revelations. "You think I harmed Katie because of her words," he retorted. "That's no proof. The accident report places you at the scene before emergency services," Morgan pointed out, "before anyone else arrived. I was anxious when she didn't appear. I went searching," Mark insisted. "Her car careened off a remote road. How did you know where to look?" Morgan pressed. His complexion paled. "I told you I was anxious." A return to the accident site unearthed startling evidence. Though Catherine's vehicle had long been removed, Morgan ordered a scan of the area with ground-penetrating radar. Buried 20 feet from the crash site, they uncovered Catherine's actual phone. The one found in the house was a decoy, stored at her parents' residence. Examination of the buried phone revealed deleted messages between Catherine and her sister on the night of her demise. "Mark discovered I'm leaving him. He's tailing me in his car. And later, he's forcing me off the road." Revisiting the autopsy photos of Catherine, the medical examiner discerned injuries inconsistent with a mere car accident. Defensive wounds marked her hands, bruising patterns hinting at strangulation. When authorities arrived to apprehend Mark, he had vanished. His abode unveiled a shrine dedicated to Catherine photographs, stolen mementos, and clippings chronicling her death. Amid his possessions lay audio editing software and scripts detailing the construction of the ghost call, using Catherine's voice to craft a macabre illusion. The call had been his perverse game, a scheme to confound investigators and torment Catherine's grieving kin. The inquiry expanded to other cases involving Mark, an emergency responder. 2 more deaths of young women, shrouded in suspicion and deemed accidents, surfaced. Both had been entangled with Mark romantically. 6 days into the manhunt, officers espied Mark's vehicle parked outside the Sullivan residence. Within, they discovered him seated in the kitchen, fixated on a phone identical to Catherine's. He offered no resistance upon arrest. "She wouldn't cease," he murmured to Morgan during interrogation. "Even after I silenced her, she persisted, accusing me. I needed all to hear her to think she lingered somewhere out there. A specter cannot testify against me." The jury swiftly rendered a verdict of guilt against Mark for first-degree murder, deliberating for a mere few hours. As the sentence echoed through the courtroom, Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her breast. Justice had arrived at last, not through supernatural means, but via the voice Catherine had left behind in her words, her fears etched in ink, her final cries for safety. The phone from the forsaken house now rests in the evidence vault. Occasionally, officers swear they hear it ring, though its battery was extracted long ago. Catherine's tale endures, not as a spectral legend, but as a testament to the resilience of victims who find ways to speak even when their voices have been silenced. Story 25. The ancient apartment held its secrets, pipes that whispered, floorboards that sighed, yet the new tenant sensed a different presence in the shadows. The footsteps echoed from above, steady and purposeful, but she dwelled on the highest floor. One evening she summoned her courage and tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound halted. A heavy silence enveloped the room. Then a solitary knock echoed back from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the mysterious knocking to herself. She convinced her mind it was merely the settling of the building or perhaps a small creature exploring the attic space. Despite the relentless footsteps that traversed her ceiling each night, she adjusted, raising the volume of her television, donning headphones to bed, anything to drown out the rhythmic footfalls that traced unseen paths in the darkness above. Detective Morris stumbled upon the tale of the apartment when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a hidden crawl space during routine repairs. The worker had uncovered a narrow passage concealed behind a section of drywall in the hallway near Sarah's apartment, intended to repair a leak. Illuminated by his flashlight, the passage revealed a secret living space, scattered food wrappers, discarded water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a weathered notebook. The building superintendent promptly contacted the authorities. Upon their arrival, Detective Morris and his partner, Detective Rivera, found the maintenance worker visibly shaken, muttering, "Someone dwells within the walls, someone watches." The notebook contained intricate details of Sarah Coleman's life, her routines, her guests, her meals, her television preferences, even the timing of her showers and slumber. The script began with precision but deteriorated into chaos towards the end, with strange symbols etched in the margins. The subject resists my influence, the final entry read. She defies me, none defy me. Forensics teams combed the hidden passages, unearthing fingerprints that matched no known records. They unveiled a labyrinth of hidden passages within the building's walls and ceilings, some antiquated by structural analysis. The passageways extended to 5 different apartments, concluding in observation points disguised as fixtures or minor blemishes, yet solely pointed towards Sarah Coleman's abode. Interviews with present residents yielded no peculiarities beyond the customary noises of communal living. Former inhabitants shared a different tale. 3 past tenants of Sarah's apartment recounted feeling a pervasive sense of being watched or hearing inexplicable movements. One had vacated after a mere fortnight. None had vocalized their experiences, fearing they'd be dismissed as paranoid. The breakthrough in the case arrived with the discovery of minuscule blood splatters in one of the crawl spaces. DNA testing linked the traces to Martin Weaver, a previous resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years earlier. His family had reported him missing, but the investigation had stalled. Martin had resided directly below Sarah's apartment. Revisiting Martin's disappearance, Detective Morris learned that Martin had voiced complaints about noises emanating from the apartment above. He had confronted the occupant, a solitary man named Edward, who departed soon after Martin's disappearance, leaving no forwarding address. A pattern emerged as investigators delved into Edward's rental history. He had resided in various apartment buildings over 2 decades, consistently opting for top-floor units, maintaining minimal social connections, and disappearing without notice. A neighbor from Edward's 3rd residence recalled him as intense, often lamenting the need for silence. Property records unveiled Edward's ownership of remote rural land. Upon exploration, investigators unearthed a cabin adorned with photographs and notes images of residents from assorted apartment buildings, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver, maps detailing ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities. Accounts documenting the observations of subjects and maintenance of habitats. At the cabin's core, a corkboard displayed newspaper clippings, a chilling array of missing persons reports, 6 in total, corresponding to Edward's various residences. Beneath the board, deep scratches marred the floor, hinting at repeated dragging. Behind the cabin, cadaver dogs led investigators to freshly disturbed soil. The excavation unearthed human remains, one after another. As forensic experts embarked on the somber task of identification, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's apartment building. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed, residents reported sporadic noises. During the installation of new security measures, maintenance workers discovered a notebook tucked in a corner where the ceiling met the wall, a newer edition. The initial page bore a solitary sentence. "They uncovered my old nest, but not my new one." The handwriting mirrored the previous journal. The last page depicted a crude layout of Sarah's apartment, with a red-marked new passage and a date for that very night. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to find her residence deserted. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter. The television hummed softly. In the bathroom, the mirror fogged with steam, revealing a message etched by a finger. "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The search for Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction worker with expertise in renovations, continues. His knowledge of building structures facilitated the creation of hidden observation points and passages. Thermal scans of Sarah's building unveiled no current occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains missing, her case tied to similar vanishings spanning multiple states. Authorities have issued alerts to apartment managers regarding unauthorized modifications and concealed spaces. For Detective Morris, the haunting image isn't the graves, the journals, or the images of unwitting residents. It's Sarah, alone in her apartment, hearing those footfalls above with no upstairs neighbor. The footsteps that ceased when she struck back and then echoed in return. At times, in the solitude of his dwelling, Detective Morris gazes up at his ceiling, listening, waiting, pondering who else might be listening too. Story 26. The worn envelope held a secret, its aged corners whispering of days long past, yet the stamp upon it gleamed new as if just awakened from slumber. With a delicate touch, the detective peeled back the folds, revealing a solitary sheet of paper bearing a message typed in haste, the letters dancing in disarray across the page. "I beg your forgiveness for my actions," the words confessed. A faint chill crept through the room as the detective's fingers brushed against the damp paper, the faint scent of metal lingering in the air. And then a telltale mark caught their eye, a reddish smear tracing the edge, a silent witness to a dark truth. It was not ink that stained the paper, but the essence of life itself. Detective Sarah Morgan, her movements precise and practiced, carefully placed the letter into an evidence bag, mindful of the weight of the confession it held. The forensics team had already unraveled the grim puzzle. The crimson stain was human blood, a match to the DNA from an unsolved murder that had cast a shadow over the department for years. The victim, a bright young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had met a tragic end in her own home, her body bearing the cruel marks of violence. Her unfinished work scattered, her truth silenced. The arrival of the enigmatic letter at the precinct, bearing only the stark address of Homicide Division, set in motion a new chapter in the investigation. The paper and envelope offered few clues, their surfaces devoid of significant prints save for ghostly smudges hinting at gloved hands. But the postmark whispered of a path to follow, a thread of hope in a case long grown cold. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan cast her gaze upon the array of evidence that had led them in circles, the faces of those lost haunting the shadows. Pinning the letter at the heart of the board, she spoke softly, her words carrying the weight of a revelation. "This changes everything," she murmured. "The one responsible carries a burden of remorse." But Detective James Chen, ever the skeptic, offered a different perspective. Or perhaps it is a game to them, he mused, a twisted performance to mock our efforts. As the investigation unfurled like a slumbering beast roused from its lair, the team delved into Rebecca's world, seeking truths buried deep within the soil of her past. Her pursuit of justice, her unyielding spirit in the face of corruption, painted a portrait of a woman unafraid to challenge the darkness. In the hushed confines of interrogation rooms, secrets began to unfurl like petals in the moonlight. Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, once a pillar of strength, now stood with shadows dancing in his eyes. A confession spilled from his lips like a whispered prayer. Rebecca had sensed a presence stalking her, a specter of fear born from the truths she sought to unearth. And then, as if the night itself conspired to reveal its secrets, a second letter arrived, bearing the same macabre signature of blood and confession. The words etched upon the page unveiled a tale of betrayal and greed, of a darkness that lurked within the heart of a family torn asunder by secrets. The journey of the investigation led them to the grand estate of the deceased patriarch, where shadows clung to the walls like tendrils of memory. Interviews with the family revealed fractures hidden beneath a facade of opulence, whispers of a legacy tainted by whispers of poison and betrayal. With each step forward, the web of lies began to unravel, threads of truth weaving a tapestry of deceit. The typewriter, a relic of days long past, held the key to unlocking the mystery, its keys whispering of secrets long kept hidden. And then a break through a hidden room, a trove of damning evidence concealed behind walls of silence. The pieces fell into place like stars aligning in the night sky, illuminating the path to justice. The truth, like a river flowing free, revealed itself in the words of a recording, a damning conversation between two souls bound by guilt and fear. The web tightened around the guilty, their protestations falling on deaf ears. As the final act played out in the theater of justice, the weight of truth bore down upon the accused, their facades crumbling like sandcastles in the tide. The courtroom, a stage set for redemption and reckoning, bore witness to the unraveling of a tapestry of lies. And in the end, as the gavel fell and justice spoke its final decree, Detective Morgan stood in silent contemplation. The blood-stained letters, now silent witnesses to a tale of woe, whispered of the fragility of the human heart, of the shadows that lurk within even the brightest souls. The case of Rebecca Warren, a beacon of light in the darkness, stood as a testament to the power of truth, of justice served cold and sweet. And as the world drifted into slumber, the echoes of a mystery solved lingered in the air, a lullaby of closure and peace. Story 27. She wiped away the steam from the mirror, gazing at her own reflection. Everything seemed normal at first glance, her face, her attire. Yet an unsettling feeling crept over her the longer she stared. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement that didn't belong to her. When she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing her every move. This was the moment that marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's peculiar journey. What unfolded would baffle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided in a modest apartment in a serene suburban area, leading a solitary life. Known as methodical and reserved, she kept to herself while maintaining a polite relationship with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a mid-sized firm painted a picture of routine and precision in her daily existence. No one would have predicted that she would become entangled in one of the most enigmatic criminal enigmas of the decade. The first signs were subtle. Objects in Rebecca's home seemed slightly out of place, nothing missing, just rearranged. A coffee mug shifted to a different shelf, books reorganized, her toothbrush on the wrong side of the sink. She brushed off these odd occurrences as mere lapses of memory, attributing them to her prolonged hours spent scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights. When Rebecca finally reached out to the authorities after weeks of these disturbances, Detective Marion Shaw received the initial complaint. The evaluation concluded nothing criminal, leaning towards a mental health concern rather than a case for law enforcement. The report was logged among the pile of low-priority cases, with no tangible evidence of a crime, just a woman feeling a pervasive sense of unease within her own home. However, everything changed with the incident in the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca vividly recounted how her reflection appeared to move independently, how she felt an unseen presence watching her even in solitude. This time, she provided proof: a self-installed security camera aimed at her front door. The footage unveiled a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video showed Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, followed by an exact replica of her entering the apartment 20 minutes later using a key. Forensic scrutiny of the footage indicated no signs of tampering or digital manipulation. The imposter moved and dressed identically to Rebecca, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. Yet Rebecca had already swiped into her workplace across town, as per the timestamped footage from her office security system. "We're dealing with a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Miss Thorne and can mimic her with eerie accuracy." The investigation escalated, revealing that fingerprints in the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, and no foreign DNA was detected. Neighbors reported nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca's usual comings and goings. Mrs. Keller mentioned a peculiar encounter where she greeted Rebecca, receiving no response, a deviation from her usual behavior. Rebecca began documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations in her living space multiplied, food vanished from the refrigerator, unfamiliar searches appeared on her computer, and unsettlingly, selfies on her phone bore a resemblance to her, but with an uncanny wrongness to the expression. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," Rebecca confided to Detective Shaw during one of their meetings. "Or perhaps someone is trying to make me think so." The breakthrough emerged when a pattern was discerned in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated the apartment during Rebecca's absence for specific pre-planned activities like therapy sessions, yoga classes, or Sunday morning grocery trips. This was no random intrusion, but a meticulously calculated surveillance operation aimed at replicating Rebecca's life. A forensic psychologist hypothesized a fixation case where the perpetrator obsessively fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, potentially aiming to supplant her entirely. Such instances, though rare, were documented in psychological literature, often stemming from a psychological breakdown and an intense desire to embody traits the victim possessed: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The focus narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely worked with Rebecca, often commenting on their shared similarities. Post-dismissal, Lily sent Rebecca a series of unsettling emails, hinting at a disturbing connection between them. Subsequently obtaining a search warrant for Lily's residence, Detective Shaw and her team stumbled upon a chilling revelation that escalated the case from disturbing to nightmarish. One room in Lily's apartment had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were plastered with hundreds of pictures capturing Rebecca's every move, from entering her apartment to social outings, all taken without her knowledge. A wardrobe stocked with replicas of Rebecca's attire, makeup mirroring her preferred brands, and meticulous notes on her behavior, speech patterns, and daily routines were discovered. The most disturbing find was the set of practice videos where Lily mimicked Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions. The videos showcased a progression from awkward attempts to near-perfect imitation of the real Rebecca. "She wanted to be me," whispered Rebecca upon seeing the evidence. "Not just imitate, but erase me." Forensic examination unveiled sophisticated tools for key replication and electronic access card duplication. Lily had maintained an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a meticulously documented calendar predicting her schedule. The perplexing part remained Lily's endgame, as her journals oscillated between first and third person, often blurring the lines between herself and Rebecca. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Lily evaded arrest, leaving behind signs of a hurried escape, open drawers, and missing technology. A nationwide manhunt ensued, while Rebecca was placed under protective custody in a secure location under constant surveillance. Authorities monitored Rebecca's previous haunts for any sign of Lily for 3 weeks, but she remained elusive. The case reached its chilling climax when a security guard from Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being under protection at a secure location, Rebecca was spotted entering the building. Surveillance footage confirmed the impossible. An individual identical to Rebecca accessed the building using a valid ID card, sifted through her files at her former desk, and departed after a 40-minute search. The unsettling reality dawned upon investigators. Lily hadn't fled. She had seamlessly assumed Rebecca's identity, stepping into her life while the real Rebecca remained in seclusion. The case lingered as an unresolved enigma. Lily Winters continued to evade capture, while Rebecca Thorne chose to forge a new identity in an undisclosed location, never returning to her former life. Detective Shaw keeps a photograph on her desk, a juxtaposition of 2 strikingly similar women. One is Rebecca Thorne and the other is Lily Winters. Occasionally, she scrutinizes their features, seeking the nuances that set them apart. The most chilling aspect, Shaw imparts to her prot.gs, is not merely resembling someone, it's desiring to become them so fervently that you erase your own existence in the process. Our identity is not just what we present, it's our most fiercely guarded possession. And sometimes we only realize its worth when it's threatened.